Chapter 4079. Yes, I'm just a child. I don't even have an ID card and can't find a place to live. I won't let you raise me for nothing. Li Shuang took half of the money. You don't have to take so much. Half is enough. She didn't pretend to be generous. Even drinking water required money. It was impossible to not have money. Ning Shu smiled. Thank you, sister. I will contact my relatives abroad as soon as possible. Li Shuang asked Ning Shu what he wanted to eat. Ning Shu said anything was fine. Hearing that there was food, Jin Ji in the Messin space became restless. He wanted to run out to eat at any moment. Ning Shu held down the restless Jin Ji and threatened that he wouldn't bring him next time if he made a fuss. The Origin King was picking and choosing in the Messin space. He was very picky about what Ning Shu bought. This thing was rubbish, that thing was rubbish. He was so angry that he exploded. Li Shuang cooked noodles for Ning Shu. Noodles were the most convenient. Ning Shu said, I'll cook tomorrow. Li Shuang didn't sleep well. She lay in bed and couldn't fall asleep. Even when she fell asleep, she kept dreaming. In her dreams, she was all kinds of fleeting views. When she woke up, she was even more tired. He felt as if he was going to die and die suddenly. In the middle of the night, Ning Shu walked into the room and placed a spirit stone at the head of Li Shuang's bed. Although the spirit stone didn't emit much spiritual energy, it had some effect. Ning Shu was very curious about the black strands wrapped around Li Shuang's red luck. Li Shuang's family was ordinary. She wasn't born rich. If this wealth was earned by herself, it was probably ill-gotten wealth. However, looking at Li Shuang, she didn't look like an evil person. On the contrary, she was kind, but she wasn't someone without vigilance. Ill-gotten wealth didn't look like it. Li Shuang had a good sleep. When she woke up, she was very relaxed. She was stunned for a moment. She hadn't slept so well in a long time. She turned her head and saw an irregular stone at the head of the bed. It looked like crystal, like glass, but it wasn't. It had a light green color, which made people feel comfortable. Where did this come from? Li Shuang held the spirit stone in her hand. It felt cool in her palm. The cool feeling spread all the way to the back of her head. She felt her mind become much clearer. She went out of the room and saw that Ning Shu was already cooking in the kitchen. She hurried over. She was still a child. It would be bad if she got scalded. Ning Shu smiled and said to Li Shuang, You're awake. Li Shuang looked at the pot and saw that it was congee with pork and century egg. It was quite fragrant. She said in surprise, You know how to cook. He didn't look very old. Ning Shu, my parents are no longer around, so I have to take care of myself. Oh, Li Shuang replied and took out the spirit stones. Is this yours? Ning Shu glanced at the spirit stone. Oh. Yes, I'll give it to you. I heard that you didn't sleep well. This stone has a special magnetic field. Of course, it can also be said to be a psychological comfort. It's very good for sleep. You tossed and turned in bed all night. I could even hear it from the living room. Li Shuang was a little embarrassed. She did feel the benefits of this stone. She slept very well last night, and it was quite good. This thing must be very expensive. I can't take it. Li Shuang returned the stone to Ning Shu. Ning Shu, it's just a stone. You can take it. You couldn't sleep at night and disturbed me. Li Shuang took the stone and found a small cloth bag to put it in. She carried it with her. This kind of cool feeling made his muddled mind a lot clearer. After breakfast, Li Shuang was going to work. She was full of energy and told Ning Shu to stay at home. There was internet and TV at home. Anyway, he shouldn't run around. Li Shuang felt like she was raising a child. Ning Shu waved at Li Shuang. When she was far away, he went out with the dog. Li Shuang was now his research subject. Li Shuang and Ning Shu arrived at the company almost one after the other. The whole company was very nervous and busy. Li Shuang asked her colleague in confusion, "What happened? Didn't you see the group chat? The supervisor said that there is a new general manager in the company today. Every department has to bring their information. A new manager makes strict changes. Every department didn't want their department to be set on fire and be punished as an example to others." Li Shuang nodded. She didn't really care. After all, this kind of high-level matter had nothing to do with a small fry like her. Li Shuang thought that this matter had nothing to do with her, but she was quickly called by the supervisor. He said that there was a problem with her work and that some expenses couldn't be reimbursed. This was Li Shuang's mistake. She reported whatever expenses the employees brought. To put it bluntly, the general manager felt that the employees were reimbursing too much. Did they have to ask the company to reimburse them when they bought groceries? Some employees bought milk powder at home and other things, and it was all included in the milk powder. Although the company had this benefit, it couldn't be like this. The finance department was attacked, and Li Shuang, who did these trivial things, was unlucky. She was pushed out. Everyone knew that there was no fish in clear water. But it didn't matter. The general manager needed a reason. He also needed someone to take the blame. Li Shuang was called into the office. The general manager was a very young man. She heard that he was the son of the chairman. The general manager said directly, "You're fired." Li Shuang didn't know how to react. She looked at the general manager and said, "The expenses they gave were reasonable and in line with the company's rules. I followed the company's rules. If you feel that the expenses are unreasonable and that the employees are reimbursing too much, then you can withdraw the expenses." That was too much. Then you just said that the expenses were too much. Why are you venting your anger on me? According to the rules, if you say that I'm wrong and don't reimburse, the company's rules are right here. Everything is decided by you. She was angry, but she also understood that she was pushed out to be the scapegoat. She felt helpless. She was just a sacrifice in the game of power. She didn't complain. It was useless even if she did. She would only make herself look bad. The general manager glanced at Li Shuang. His expression was cold and emotionless. "So, I've wronged you." Li Shuang said, "I have nothing to say. General manager, how can I change your decision? As for things like colleague love, it didn't exist." Although she didn't look forward to it, she still felt very disappointed. All kinds of emotions attacked Li Shuang's heart. She felt a lump in her throat and almost cried. But she held it in. At this time, no one would sympathize with her. Instead, she looked terrible. The general manager smiled and said, "What you said makes sense. If you're fired directly, it's indeed unfair." Li Shuang, she grinned. She felt very tired. Li Shuang, who was about to be fired, suddenly stayed. Her colleagues in the finance department were surprised to see her expression. Li Shuang ignored them. She didn't have the money to resign. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Ning Shu smiled. He had a look of understanding on his face. Chapter 4080. "I know where Li Shuang's black stockings came from," Ning Shu said to Guzi, who was licking his fur. Guzi asked, "Where did they come from?" Ning Shu raised his thumb and middle finger. "Based on my calculations, her wealth is probably because of her husband. She also needs to marry a rich man. Cinderella became a princess. A woman's marriage could be considered a second reincarnation. If she was born well, her life would be good. If she wasn't born well, her life wouldn't be good. But now, women weren't so harsh. Divorce was good. Ning Shu guessed that Li Shuang's black stockings came from Li Shuang's future partner. It would bring Li Shuang wealth, but at the same time, it would also bring about a storm. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Guzi's dark eyes stared at Ning Shu, full of suspicion. What do you mean? Is she getting married? Ning Shu shrugged and didn't say anything. Li Shuang was ostracized in the company. It wasn't obvious in the other departments, but it was obvious in the finance department. This ostracization was mixed with surprise. Li Shuang was about to be fired. Why was she still able to come back? Did it have something to do with the general manager? How could she coax the general manager to change his mind? The general manager was young, promising, handsome, and rich. With such good genes and resources, of course, he would be favored by females. As long as one wasn't blind, one could see that the general manager would be a perfect partner. When this perfect partner was a little different for one female, it was a dangerous fortune for the other females. From the competition for jobs, now there was a competition for reproduction. Ning Shu felt tired for Li Shuang. Was she going to watch an idol drama with Cinderella and Prince Charming? Guzi's shedding became more and more serious. It was so serious that Li Shuang kept changing dog food for Guzi. She thought that Guzi was shedding because he ate too much salt. She even sent him to the pet hospital. They didn't find anything. Ning Shu said, "What's wrong with you? Why are you so inexperienced? Nothing has happened yet and you're already so stressed that you're going bald." "Hey, I'm not going to stay with a bald dog," Guzi said. "I'm probably at the shedding stage." "Whatever you say, it's fine." The relationship between Li Shuang and Ning Shu was getting better and better. Anyone who came home from work and saw that the house was clean and there were steaming hot dishes on the table would feel very happy and warm. What kind of treasure was this? This child was not annoying and even knew how to take care of people. Ning Shu saw Li Shuang get off a car from the balcony, and it was a luxury car. With a sweep of his spiritual force, he saw a young and handsome man in the driver's seat. Li Shuang greeted him and went upstairs. The dog lost a piece of fur. Ning Shu smiled and asked Li Shuang, "Sister Shuang, I saw someone send you back. Is that your boyfriend?" Li Shuang quickly denied, "No, it's the company's leader. He sent me back because he had something to say on the way back." Ning Shu replied, "Oh, what's the matter?" "Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that the general manager is in a high position. Many times, he doesn't have a good understanding of the situation below. What he comes into contact with are things sent up by various departments. He didn't fire me because he wanted me to report all the details of the company. Anything that felt wrong must be reported." Li Shuang sat down and began to eat with Ning Shu. Ning Shu blinked. "He wants you to snitch." Li Shuang said, "You're right." Ding dong, Li Shuang's phone rang. She picked up the phone, smiled, and began to reply to the message. Ning Shu pushed the dog off the table. Dog fur was falling everywhere. How could he let people eat? Li Shuang replied to the message with a smile on her face. Perhaps it was because she slept well at night, or perhaps it was because of the arrival of love, but her face was like a flower. Even if it wasn't love, Li Shuang's current state showed that she still had a good impression of the general manager. Such an offending thing, and it was done for free. Usually, people who snitched would be ostracized and hated. Unbeknownst to him, someone had reported his every move to the person who could decide his fate. Ning Shu asked directly, "Sister, do you like the person who sent you the message? You're just a kid." Li Shuang patted Ning Shu's head and went into her room. Ning Shu stared at Li Shuang's back and looked at the fate above her head. It was black and red. He had never seen such fate before. The dog had given up struggling. He lay on the ground like a pancake. "I'm obviously a creature from the world of samsara. Why should I worry about this? Even if she dies, she will enter the world of samsara. That black and red fate will definitely disappear. I must have stayed in the small world for too long. That's why I'm so stupid. It's no big deal. I can't lose fur anymore. The dog kept telling himself. Ning Shu said, "It's not a big deal." Li Shuang's relationship with the general manager was getting closer and closer. In the company, they didn't have much interaction. But when they were out of the company, they would have dinner together. She would call Ning Shu and tell him that she wouldn't come back for dinner. She would send Li Shuang back at 9 o'clock in the evening. They weren't in a relationship. Ning Shu twisted his head off. The dog had already seen through life and death. No matter how Li Shuang was in this life, as long as she entered the world of samsara, he would bless her. It was no big deal. Did he have to lose fur? Ning Shu looked at the black and red fate above Li Shuang's head and was a little speechless. Black and red intertwined tightly with each other. But looking at the general manager's fate, it was indeed red. He was a rich man. But Li Shuang's fate, with Li Shuang's help, some problems at the bottom were presented to the general manager. Then he carried out bold and decisive reforms to improve the efficiency of the whole company. Some bloated areas were directly cut off. There were a lot of personnel changes. Some people were fired, but some people were promoted. For example, Li Shuang jumped from a small staff in the finance department to the general manager's secretary. At this time, even a fool would know the role that Li Shuang played. Of course, Li Shuang didn't do anything wrong. Those employees who were fired either slacked off or pocketed money. They were the company's parasites. In general, it was a good thing for the company. But it didn't prevent other people from rejecting Li Shuang. In other people's eyes, Li Shuang rose by stepping on the bodies of the company's employees. It was wrong. It was right to turn a blind eye to these actions. But Li Shuang didn't regret it at all. First, it could help the general manager. Second, these people's actions were really unsightly. They did something wrong, but they still blamed others and the company. The general manager saw that Li Shuang's condition was good. His attitude towards Li Shuang was very gentle and he relied on her. Chapter 4082. He was trying to tame Li Shuang, and he could even do things that would harm his own body. Everyone's happiness was different. Some enjoyed eating, some enjoyed shopping, some enjoyed exercising, and some enjoyed conquering. For some people, it was just a different way of obtaining happiness. This was a deep and touching love. Some love couldn't be separated, even if it was painful. For example, Li Shuang's love was sweet now, but soon, Li Shuang got pregnant. Yes, as the heir of a corporation, she had an illegitimate child. Moreover, it was an illegitimate child before marriage. This was definitely not a good thing. Then, this child couldn't be kept. As a mother, as a sensitive girl, it was a very happy thing to have a child with the person she loved. But now, the man she loved didn't want this child. He hurt the child and even hurt her body. How could she take it? Anyway, Go Zi was already stunned. He stood outside the door and listened to Li Shuang crying in the room. She was depressed and in pain. Go Zi wanted to say that he didn't want it. The child was just a blood clot. It wasn't even a blood clot. It didn't even have a heartbeat. It wasn't even a life. Go Zi looked at Ning Shu in confusion. During this period, his brain had already stopped working. He could only watch as the situation went in an unpredictable direction. He was like a wild dog that had lost its anus. Ning Shu patted his head. Just watch slowly. It depends on Li Shuang herself. Break up with her. She couldn't afford to offend Su Ruichu. When they reconciled, she would say that he was trying to drive a wedge between them. If he tried to persuade them to reconcile, she would say that she was hurt so badly and he still wanted her to reconcile with him. In short, he wouldn't be human. It was obvious that Li Shuang wasn't Su Ruichu's opponent. Sweet but poisonous love. Su Ruichu was a master at playing with hearts. Li Shuang's child couldn't be kept. No matter if he was forceful or gentle, Li Shuang would still be lying on the operating table. Her heart that was being played with was like fried meat. One side flipped, the other side flipped. She was better off dead. Some people saw this as a necessary part of love. Only this kind of love, a heart-wrenching love, could be called love. Some people were awake but in pain. No matter what it was, if it brought extreme pain and was highly praised by others, then there was a problem. Pain without knowing it was very scary. Right now, Li Shuang was in a lot of pain. As for whether she was aware of it or not, no one knew. Li Shuang was not in the mood to go to work. She was not in the mood to do anything. At this time, she was too lazy to worry. Without a job, she had no money to eat and no place to live. Su Ruichu came to the door, followed by a few burly men. They directly broke into the house. Even if they didn't open the door, they directly found a locksmith and directly opened the door. The young paparazzo arched his back and bared his teeth at Su Ruichu. Ning Shu stood outside Li Shuang's room and opened his arms. "Uncle, you are trespassing. I'm going to call the police." Su Ruichu was expressionless. His cold face was like an ice sculpture, without the slightest bit of warmth. There was no sign of his feelings for Li Shuang at all. The scene of him harming himself to keep Li Shuang was like a dream. Of course, asking her to stay didn't necessarily mean love. There were people who believed that they couldn't live without her. "Break down the door," Su Ruichu said coldly. Ning Shu was expressionless. "Are you sure? If you do it, you won't be able to walk out of this door today." With a click, the door opened. Li Shuang's expression was cold. Her eyes were red, and her nose was also red. It was obvious that she had cried. Su Ruichu sighed. "Why do you have to do this?" Li Shuang glanced at him, seemingly without any emotion. Su Ruichu frowned. "Take her away." "No need, I can walk by myself." She touched her stomach. Ning Shu looked at Li Shuang. "Sister. I'm fine. Wait for me at home. I'll be back soon." Ning Shu frowned. "Can you do it?" He looked at Li Shuang's luck. It was really black and red. This kind of black probably came from the pain of the soul. The pain of entanglement and despair intertwined with the soul poison. Li Shuang was very calm. She even smiled at Ning Shu. "It's okay." "Ning Shu, really? Do you want to call your family?" Li Shuang, "No need." Ning Shu's mouth twitched. He and Guzi watched Li Shuang and Su Ruichu leave together. Guzi blinked his eyes in confusion. What exactly happened? Ning Shu shrugged his shoulders. Then, he took a basket of fruits and flowers to the hospital to visit Li Shuang at the right time. Li Shuang was lying on the hospital bed with a pale face. This was a VIP ward. There were bodyguards guarding the door. It didn't look like they were protecting her, but more like they were monitoring her. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Ning Shu walked over. As expected, he was stopped by the bodyguards. "You're not allowed to visit." Ning Shu said, "My sister is inside, but you don't allow me to visit her." "Who are you? How can there be such a logic in this world?" "I'm going to call the police and say that you're imprisoning her." Her little mouth kept moving. One moment, she wanted to call the police, the next moment, she wanted to say that they were committing a crime. The bodyguards were a little confused. How could she say that? One of the bodyguards quickly went to call his employer. Then, he came back and said to Ning Shu, "Go in, but you only have half an hour." Ning Shu, was this a prison visit? Ning Shu entered the room. The ward was very big. There were all kinds of living facilities. Li Shuang was sitting by the window, wearing a loose hospital gown. When she heard the noise, she turned to look at Ning Shu. Her eyes were dull and lonely. "You're here," Ning Shu said. "There's wind at the window. Hurry and lie down. Your health is important." Now, even if she thought about what had happened before, she couldn't change it. Su Ruichu destroyed Li Shuang's spirit. Li Shuang destroyed her own body. Li Shuang said calmly, "What health? I'm really a failure of a mother. I can't even protect my own child." Ning Shu's black face was filled with question marks. She clearly knew that Su Ruichu's purpose was to get rid of this child, but she still followed him. She probably had some hope in Su Ruichu, and she was hoping that Su Ruichu wouldn't be cold and heartless. That was his child. Now, she was completely disappointed. The dog barked at Li Shuang. Li Shuang bent down and hugged it in her arms. She stroked it, and then tears fell drop by drop, dripping into the dog's fur. Ning Shu quickly said, "Don't cry. It's not good for your body to cry during confinement." "Li Shuang, who would care about me now?" Li Shuang's eyes were red. "Ning Shu, didn't I say anything just now? Didn't I care? At this time, you're still counting on Su Ruichu? Counting on Su Ruichu to feel sorry for you? You're clearly in despair." Chapter 4083. She was clearly being tortured and in pain, but she was not willing to give up and was looking forward to it. Perhaps without Li Shuang knowing, she had probably gotten used to this mode. Su Ruichu had hurt her so much, so he would compensate her and treat her better. Because of this sweetness, she could endure that kind of pain. This was also why when some scumbags turned around and said a few nice words, or even groveled and begged, some girls' hearts would soften. Ning Shu was suddenly very curious. Su Ruichu had hurt Li Shuang so much. What kind of method would he use next to get Li Shuang to stay and get her forgiveness? And he would use house arrest. This kind of domineering method, more or less, was actually a little masochistic. Imprisonment like this actually stimulated one's hormones. Imprisonment play, so heavy, so exciting. Ning Shu asked a nonsensical question. "Sister, do you want to leave? I can help you leave here." Li Shuang shook her head. "Why should I leave? People who hurt others, even people who did not even let off their own flesh and blood, can be fine." Her eyes were red and she was gritting her teeth. "Why should I be the only one in pain? I want him to have a taste of the pain too." Ning Shu sighed in his heart. Li Shuang's mentality was too normal. She was not willing to give up and harbored such thoughts. She hurt the enemy 1,000 times but hurt 800 times herself. She kept pestering him endlessly. She scratched her head. You would think that the other party was very agreeable, but in reality, the other party treated this as a kind of game, or even a kind of psychological warfare, to gain the pleasure of conquering and IQ crushing. Sometimes, Ning Shu had to admit that there were really too many people in the world. Some people, others said that they were scumbags, but they did not even realize it. Would people say that you were scumbags when you bought something? No. But to some people, this was the way to gain happiness, without any psychological burden or guilt. Your pain and struggle could even bring him joy. Ning Shu said, "I think the most important thing for you now is to leave him and not be entangled like this," sinking deeper and deeper. They had both lost a child and their bodies had been hurt. So many tragedies stemmed from their unwillingness to give up. Li Shuang just lowered her head and stroked the dog. Ning Shu was speechless. To Li Shuang, Su Ruichu had already become a mental Dapan. It was painful, but she could not stop. Was she perhaps enjoying the pain? Ning Shu was shocked by his own thoughts. But thinking about it, it wasn't impossible. Some people found joy in being abused. The ward was very quiet. Ning Shu would not persuade her anymore. After all, her emotions were very chaotic now. It was useless to say more. The door opened and Su Ruichu walked in. He was holding a large bouquet of flowers. Behind him were the employees of the flower shop. They held bouquets of flowers and turned half of the room into a sea of flowers. The air was filled with the fragrance of flowers. It was so pungent that his head hurt. Su Ruichu asked Li Shuang gently, "Are you feeling better?" Li Shuang's face twitched, and there was uncontrollable hatred in her eyes. "What does my health have to do with you? Stop crying crocodile tears." Su Ruichu held Li Shuang's hand, but Li Shuang brushed it away. Su Ruichu's face showed a weak and painful expression. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you." He knelt down in front of Li Shuang. Li Shuang sat on the bed. He buried his head in Li Shuang's arms and pushed the dog away. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." The dog was speechless. Ning Shu was speechless. What's the use of saying sorry? Weren't you the one who brought her here for the operation? Now you're acting like you're in a difficult situation. And now, he was just like a bird spreading its wings in Li Shuang's heart. Li Shuang's face trembled. Her eyes showed that she was struggling. Obviously, a grown man was showing such a weak side in front of her. But Li Shuang quickly made up her mind and pushed Su Ruichu away. "Get lost. I don't want to see you again." Shuang, what can I do for you to forgive me?" He was in pain. "As long as you get lost and return the child to me, I'll forgive you." Su Ruichu left in a daze. Li Shuang grabbed a bouquet of flowers by the bed and threw it at Su Ruichu's back. "Take all these things away. Whenever I see these things, I'll think of you, a vicious and heartless man." Su Ruichu's figure paused for a moment before he left without looking back. Ning Shu watched the scene. His eyes and stomach were sore. He stayed in the ward for a long time with the excuse of staying to take care of Li Shuang. Before Su Ruichu came, Li Shuang hoped that he would come. When Su Ruichu came, he kept repeating the heart-wrenching scene. One begged for forgiveness, and the other seemed like he would never forgive her. But he stayed in the ward and did not move. It was still the same sentence. Although she said no, her body was very obedient. After that, Su Ruichu doted on Li Shuang. All kinds of delicacies and all kinds of expensive jewelry were placed in front of Li Shuang. All kinds of branded and limited products were casually chosen. Clothes, shoes, bags, whatever a woman needed and desired, he gave them away, but Li Shuang did not even look at them. She treated money like dirt. If Ning Shu did not know about her situation, he would have thought that she was renting a cheap house and was being harassed. He almost thought that Li Shuang was a rich young lady. He was not moved at all. On the other hand, Ning Shu looked at all kinds of things and handed them to Li Shuang. "Look, these things are so beautiful. Wear one and you'll feel better." Li Shuang looked at Ning Shu. "Do you think I'll wear his things?" Ning Shu widened his eyes. "These things are innocent. You're already in so much pain. Why don't you let yourself get something and be a little happier? If you don't like these things, you can sell them and return them to the store. You've already cooperated with the performance. The performance fee is also paid. You've even lost your heart and body." Li Shuang did not speak. She turned her back to Ning Shu. Ning Shu was speechless. Poor people's money was the most precious. Therefore, they had to talk about money with the poor. Rich people's hearts were the most precious. Therefore, she wanted to talk about love with the rich. Li Shuang still wanted Su Ruichu's heart. To a certain extent, these things tarnished the perfect love in Li Shuang's heart. Ning Shu scratched his head. He finally understood why she had to lose everything and still be so infatuated. Even people were not perfect. How could a love that was born from people be perfect? Li Shuang's current state of mind was very dangerous. Ning Shu had nothing to do. He placed the bouquets and vases, on the coffee table, on the windowsill, and in the bathroom. Li Shuang suddenly asked, "Have you contacted your relatives?" Chapter 4084. Ning Shu nodded and said, "Yes, I did. I was going to leave, but seeing you like this, I decided to stay for a while." Li Shuang pursed her lips and looked like she was about to cry. At this time, there was actually a child by her side. Ning Shu said to Li Shuang, "I think you should tell your family. After what happened to you, you need their opinion." He had nothing to do with Li Shuang. If he said too much, it would seem annoying. Li Shuang's elders had given their opinion. At least they would think for Li Shuang. Li Shuang shook her head and said, "My family's situation is actually, I only have one father. My mother passed away due to illness. I don't want my father to go back and forth. An honest father would definitely be at a loss when facing Su Ruichu. Other than worrying about adding pressure to him, there was nothing he could do." Li Shuang usually sent home the money she earned. The other half was used for her own living and she had to try her best to save money. Ning Shu immediately handed Li Shuang a diamond necklace and all sorts of branded items. "Since that's the case, you should accept these. Live a better life and take good care of your body." Li Shuang's expression changed. "I won't accept his things." Ning Shu said, "You think that accepting his things means forgiving him forever, right? Are you afraid that in his heart, you're a gold digger?" Li Shuang didn't say anything, but it was obvious that she thought so. Ning Shu said, "Since you want to break it off, let's do it cleanly. Accept the things and then break it off. The money and goods are done." Li Shuang furrowed her delicate brows. "This isn't a deal. What do you mean by done? Don't say things like that. It makes me feel bad." Ning Shu was speechless. "So, you deserve to have your body trampled on, and you deserve to be hurt? Forcing yourself to be perfect is a disease. Pure, kind, gentle. These were the impressions men had of women. Women also tried their best to portray these qualities on themselves. Living as a stereotype. Treat yourself better. Moreover, these things were given to you by others. You didn't want them. It would be a waste not to take them. It was useless to talk about conditions without material things." Ning Shu said, "Let him think that you're a gold digger and then break it off with you. Isn't that good?" Li Shuang was speechless. "Why do you always persuade me to accept these things?" Ning Shu said, "Because with these things, you can move to a new place. You won't be harassed by the landlord. You can rent a place closer to the company. You can sleep more in the morning, and you won't have to squeeze into the subway." There was a kind of laziness that was prevalent among the current generation of youths. They didn't want to do anything and just wanted to lie down. What else did he want to do when he had to squeeze in the subway for 2 hours every day? Working out was non-existent. Cooking delicious food was even more non-existent. There was only survival, no life. Ning Shu, with money, you can eat better, wear better quality clothes, and buy more things. Happiness was much better than being in love. Li Shuang couldn't refute it. She felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't refute it. But he couldn't find a rebuttal. Ning Shu said, "Lie down and rest for a while. Don't sit all the time. It's not good for your health." Su Ruichu would come every day. No matter what Li Shuang's attitude was, he would come regardless of rain or shine. He would stay for a long time or a short time. Sometimes, he would leave after taking a look at Li Shuang and ask her if she liked the gifts. Li Shuang ignored him. No matter what he said or did, she was indifferent. Su Ruichu, who didn't get a response, was very angry. He pinched Li Shuang's chin and forced her to look at him. Li Shuang's eyes were empty. Even if he was in front of her, she couldn't see him. Her eyes didn't have him at all. There was nothing at all. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Su Ruichu left angrily. Li Shuang's tears fell from the corners of her eyes. Torturing the other party was also torturing herself. Go Zi's eyes were also filled with sparkling tears. Where am I? What happened? I don't know what to do. Ning Shu almost laughed at Go Zi's confused look. It would be strange if Go Zi understood such a complicated thing. Ning Shu said, "It's not a big deal. She just fell in love with a man and this man made her suffer." Li Shuang started to lose weight. During the confinement period, she didn't gain weight. Instead, she lost weight. Her face was pale and there was no color in it. In the later stages, she basically couldn't eat anymore. She vomited after eating. This was physiological nausea. She would vomit once she ate. In the beginning, Su Ruichu forced Li Shuang to eat and fed her little by little. But she still vomited after eating. Because Su Ruichu forced her, she couldn't eat anymore and vomited even more. The angry Su Ruichu forced her mouth open and forced it down. Such a rough action naturally made Li Shuang vomit. He asked the doctor and he said that it was anorexia nervosa. With anorexia, one would become thinner and thinner. Li Shuang was now on a nutrition drip. The more Ning Shu looked at it, the more he wanted to laugh. The familiar feeling was getting stronger. This was a fucking sadistic relationship. Li Shuang used to be such a normal girl. But now, she was like a lunatic. Ning Shu looked at the black strands on her head. They were entangled with each other. That ferociousness and entanglement seemed to have fused into Li Shuang's bones and blood. This experience made Li Shuang unable to live in peace for the rest of her life. If she could understand and see through the essence, she would be redeemed and peaceful. If she couldn't understand, then she would fall into a swamp and sink deeper and deeper. A good love made each other successful. A bad love made her suffer for the rest of her life. She couldn't forget and thought that she was deeply in love. Su Ruichu's luck was clean. He was a rich man. He would be a rich man for the rest of his life and he would get richer and richer. What he got from this relationship was happiness and giving. I gave a woman my feelings and this woman was happy because of me and in pain because of me. Ning Shu shook his head and said to Go Zi, "Your poop picker has been tamed. Now, he's causing all sorts of trouble, pain and despair. It's just to get more love." It was like a child crying to get the adult's attention and get what he wanted. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Go Zi cried again. "Wah, my poop picker. What's wrong with him?" Suddenly, he stopped living. He stopped working. He stopped eating. The rent was about to be due. Ning Shu often visited Li Shuang. The bodyguards recognized him and they didn't stop him from entering. Su Ruichu allowed someone to visit Li Shuang in order to make her feel better. It seemed that this child had a good relationship with her. Ning Shu carried a thermos and walked into the ward. Li Shuang was sitting on the bed. Her face was haggard and she was about to lose weight. Ning Shu didn't say anything to comfort her. He stood by the bed and looked at her. He stared at her hair and said, "You're bald. A lot of your scalp is exposed. There's hair all over the pillow." Chapter 4088. Li Shuang became more and more dispirited. "Can't I leave?" She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. I'm scared, okay?" Ning Shu comforted her. "You can think that he loves you. Does he really love me?" Li Shuang was very confused. "How should I put it? He's interested in playing with you. It's undeniable that he's interested in you. You can comfort yourself by thinking that he chose you and not anyone else, Ning Shu said. Li Shuang's mind was in a mess. I don't know. I'm very confused. I don't know what to do. I love him, but I'm not sure if he loves me. Ning Shu shrugged. After all, love was something between two people. No matter what decision Li Shuang made, Ning Shu would give her his blessings. After staying in this world for a long time, Ning Shu was about to leave. The collector heat in the Messin space was very noisy. It was a beautiful world outside, but they couldn't get out. Especially the Origin King, who scolded Ning Shu every day. Even the dog's attitude towards Li Shuang was not as intimate as before. Once there was love, everything else would take a back seat. Especially in Li Shuang's heart, the dog was just a pet. When she couldn't even take care of herself, how could she care about the dog? Li Shuang was a scumbag, and Su Ruichu was the biggest scumbag she had ever met. Moreover, he was a scumbag in a gorgeous package, filled with endless temptation. Some scumbags could be seen, but some scumbags could not be seen clearly in their entire life. They were deeply attracted to their beauty and charm. However, looking at a beautiful scumbag was better than looking at an ugly scumbag. It made people feel better. If it was a man like the male landlord, Li Shuang would not only be infatuated with him, but also vomit. Li Shuang came out of the bathroom and returned to the bed. The bodyguard pushed the door open and said to Ning Shu, "Visiting time is over. You should leave immediately." The two of them stayed in the bathroom for too long. Li Shuang could not be seen from the surveillance camera. Su Ruichu called the bodyguard at the door and asked the visitors to leave. Intentionally or unintentionally, he isolated the people around Li Shuang so that Li Shuang would not interact with others. Ning Shu said to Li Shuang, "I'll bring you food tomorrow. You don't have to go through so much trouble. This is a ward. Just ask someone to prepare whatever you want to eat. You can just come here," Li Shuang said with her head lowered. Ning Shu smirked. "Alright, I'll visit you when I'm free. Maybe I'll leave soon. My relatives abroad are coming back." A sincere smile appeared on Li Shuang's face. "Congratulations. I hope you'll live well in the future." Ning Shu carried Go Zi and left the hospital. He let go and Go Zi jumped to the ground. He said, "I'm going back to the world of reincarnation." Ning Shu asked, "Aren't you curious about her final choice?" Go Zi replied, "What's there to be curious about? In the past, she always met scum and was very unlucky. Now, she doesn't encounter many unlucky things anymore." Ning Shu looked at the weathered Go Zi. "Why?" Go Zi said, "She met the biggest scum. This scum hurt her and made her cry, but he won't let other scums bully her. Other scums don't have the strength of this scum." Ning Shu said. Damn, Go Zi suddenly understood. He had only stayed in the pocket world for a year and he had become so knowledgeable. Go Zi raised his head. He looked at Go Zi at a 45-degree angle. "I'd rather bless my soul in the world of reincarnation. I was so innocent and beautiful back then." Ning Shu patted his head. "You're very beautiful now. Humans are human because of their emotions and desires. Because of this, they were different from other living creatures. There were pros and cons, fortune and misfortune. Some people indulged in their emotions and desires, indulging in love and hate. Just take it that Li Shuang is loyal to her feelings. Ning Shu didn't despise love. It was just that love affected one's rationality too much. In times of danger, losing rationality meant losing one's life. She's loyal to the choice in her heart. She can't bear to let go. Love is love." Ning Shu let the three people out of the pocket world. They went to eat and drink. The Origin King asked and they would return to the void. If they wouldn't return for a long time, he would stay in this world for a while. Ning Shu wouldn't let the Origin King run around. He didn't understand the rules of modern society. There were cameras everywhere. Even a person flying in the sky would be detected. He didn't want to cause a commotion. Wherever the Origin King wanted to go, Ning Shu had to follow him. The Origin King rolled his eyes. He really despised Ning Shu. He let you be a guide, but that didn't mean you were in charge of everything. To be honest, the Origin King saw a business opportunity when he saw the bustling pocket world filled with people. If one day, he could gather all the people in the pocket world and make these weak creatures strong, even if they weren't strong, they could make up for it with numbers. Ants could bite an elephant to death. Besides, there were too many pocket worlds. The birthplace of a plane would give birth to many pocket worlds, and each pocket world would have so many people. Moreover, the reproduction ability of the humans in the pocket world was also quite amazing. They could reproduce to the point that the pocket world couldn't support them and desperately consume the pocket world's energy. This idea was only in the Origin King's heart. He didn't say it to anyone, including Ning Shu. He vaguely felt that if he said this, he would definitely be scolded by Ning Shu. He could feel that Ning Shu treated these pocket worlds differently. If he knew that he treated the pocket worlds as incubators, he might break off their friendship. Moreover, the plan wasn't comprehensive. It wouldn't be good if it was heard and seen through by others. If the humans in the pocket world thought, fuck, there are aliens coming to capture us as slaves, to make us do hard labor, and to reform us. We must resist. Fuck. The Origin King stared at the humans walking on the roadside, especially the young laborers. Women are physically weaker, so they should stay and reproduce. Void creatures were more arrogant, so how could they be the subordinates of others? But in the pocket world, there were endless people. With so many pocket worlds, there were also many people. His eyes were very bright, so bright that Ning Shu couldn't help looking at him. What's with this covetous look? Does he want to eat human flesh? Feeling Ning Shu's probing gaze, the Origin King avoided Ning Shu's eyes and looked around, not making eye contact with Ning Shu. Ning Shu saw the Origin King's mood and immediately jumped up to kick his knee. What are you doing? What did you do? She had locked the Origin King in her meson space and had been talking all day. Today, he was so quiet. It was really strange. The Origin King was the kind of person who wouldn't back down. Chapter 4089. But now it was so quiet, something was really wrong. Ning Shu stared at the Origin King closely, wondering if the Origin King wanted to cause trouble. What are you doing? Did you do something wrong? Ning Shu asked. The Origin King's knee was in pain from Ning Shu's kick, so he bent down and rubbed it. What wrong? What wrong can I do? I didn't do anything wrong. Don't talk nonsense, you've wronged me. Ning Shu, he was not sure before, but now that he heard the Origin King's words, he was more and more certain that the Origin King was up to no good. What the hell do you want to do? Tell me, I'll give you some ideas and see if they work. Ning Shu said gently, I've collected so many of your energy bodies, so I'll give you some ideas. Ning Shu's eyes were extremely normal, causing the Origin King to hesitate, wanting to say what he wanted to say. The Origin King immediately shook his head frantically. He couldn't say it. Who knew if she was on the same side as him? Their relationship wasn't very close, so what if she plagiarized his ideas? Ning Shu smiled cutely, grabbing the Origin King's arm and shaking it. Say it, what do you want? Don't keep it in your heart. The Origin King rolled his eyes. If I say it, don't be angry. Ning Shu smiled more gently. Why should I be angry? Will you hurt me? The Origin King asked. Why would I hurt you? He couldn't hurt him. He had been beaten up in the abyss before, and now that his body had been reconstructed, the Origin King felt that Ning Shu was stronger than before. Even if it was a dog he had raised beside him for some time, he would still have feelings for it. The Origin King regarded Ning Shu as one of his own, one-sided. The Origin King said, I think there are a lot of people in this small world. Ning Shu nodded. Yes, there were a lot of people, and then? The Origin King said, their infrastructure is amazing. It was like ants building a nest, obviously weak, but they could build towering buildings. Ning Shu's eyes turned. Did this guy want to capture people to build houses? They could build houses themselves, so there was no need to build them magnificently. The Origin King was still sighing, there is strength in numbers. Ning Shu tilted his head, his face full of question marks. So. Therefore, I feel that humans are also a kind of power. Ning Shu reacted at once. He immediately jumped up and elbowed Origin King in the stomach, causing him to bend over. Then, he began beating up the Origin King. The three people nearby just watched, not daring to step forward to stop him. Ning Shu flipped his hair and took a deep breath. He placed his hands on his hips and looked at the Origin King. Is there something wrong with your head? Virtual King, I fucking knew it. Liar, you acted so cute before, but now you're turning your back on me. Women are all pigs. The Origin King said angrily, what's wrong? What's wrong with my thinking? Can't I control these humans? Ning Shu clicked his tongue. To be honest, a human's body is weak, but when it comes to playing mind games, they can play you to death. Do you believe it? Even if you create a team, you still need humans to manage it. If you strengthen humans, do you think they will listen to you? They will directly make you a mere figurehead. Moreover, if you want people to follow you, they will follow you. In the face of danger, everyone will pick up their weapons and resist. If you want to suppress humans, you have to suppress them all the time because there will always be people who resist. There are countless humans who have the spirit of resistance. Even if you subdue them, if these people give you the wrong information, you will fail miserably. Do you think you are a grand uncle who can suppress a huge group of people? Suppressing them generation after generation required a lot of blood, but it also involved a lot of manpower and material resources. There was a complete organization, and everything was interconnected. It could be said with certainty that the Origin King could not take this path now. He would suffer a very fierce backlash and might even be killed by humans. The Origin King pursed his lips. Although he knew that this plan might fail, he was still unconvinced. He said stubbornly, how do you know I can't do it? Ning Shu. Can't do it my ass. Whether you can or can't do it is not determined by your mouth. Am I weaker than a grand uncle? Ning Shu looked him up and down. I don't know if you are weaker than a grand uncle, but I know that it took a lot of time to establish that organization. There are various aspects, reward system, punishment system. How do you give your subordinates motivation? How do you make them have the strength to rush up? What can you give them? This organization was given to those who entered it. They had strong foundations and lofty work ideals. Everyone was doing the job of protecting the plane. They were heroes. Whether it was the mission enforcers or other departments, they were all protecting the plane and guarding the sea of law. It was a mutually beneficial work. In terms of identity and mission, it was completely enough. At least when Ning Shu was still a rookie, he thought that he had the mentality of saving the world and was in a state of being on steroids. This was a strong sense of mission. After leaving that organization, it was a conflict between the higher-ups of the organization. It was personal and had nothing to do with the organization. What did the Origin King want these people to do? Conquer the void? What an empty and boring thing. It was fake and had no small goals. This was the most fatal because they did not know what to do. They could not even take a step forward. What a stupid idea. Can you handle this? Use your intelligence and strength to suppress everyone. Even if the living environment of that organization was very bad, from all aspects, it was a strict and orderly organization. Looking back calmly, from the perspective of a bystander, this organization was very impressive. It was just that it was too unfriendly to the weak. Of course, the premise was that a grand uncle was still alive. If he died, this organization would probably collapse. There was never a lack of rebellious thoughts among humans, especially among the strong. Who would want to submit to others? Unless the other party was so much stronger than them that they could not rush up. Ning Shu looked at the Origin King seriously. I advise you to give up on this idea. You can't control them. The Origin King was stubborn. Why can't I control them? They are so weak. TSK. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. Anyway, he had already broken down the reason. Whether he listened or not was his business. The Origin King was very dispirited. Could it be that he could not conquer the void in this life? Then what was the use of his Void King title? Ning Shu jumped up and patted the Origin King's shoulder. The Origin King thought that she wanted to hit him and immediately dodged. Ning Shu said, "Why do you want to conquer the void? Isn't it good to be happy every day?" The Origin King said, "I am the Void King. If I don't conquer the entire void, what kind of Void King am I? My responsibility is to conquer the void. If I don't have any goals in life, I am no different from a salted fish." Chapter 4090. Origin King was very serious. He said word by word like he was making a vow, "I will conquer the void and become the true Void King." Dong Lan. Was there something wrong with this person's brain? Not only did the void have land, but it also had an unpredictable ocean. That meant that this guy wanted to conquer their race. Dong Lan asked faintly, "You want to conquer our race?" Origin King raised his head. "Of course, as long as you admit that I am the Void King." Dong Lan. "What if we don't admit it?" Origin King said matter-of-factly, "Then I will beat you until you admit it." "I want to be the true Void King." Dong Lan's mouth twitched. "Look at how arrogant you are. You want to start a war just for a title and waste your race's strength to attack others, offending others for no reason. What a stupid thing to do." Luckily, Origin King didn't have any other race members. Otherwise, his race would be dragged down. He wasn't a qualified leader. How was the modern world? Ning Shu said, "Work hard and become the Void King soon. It's good to have a goal to strive for." All he had to do was strike at him constantly, and strike as many times as he could. For example, when Origin King had the idea of enslaving humans, he was attacked by Ning Shu. Now, Origin King didn't have the heart to find humans anymore. He was weak, had so many thoughts, and wasn't loyal. Scram, he didn't want him anymore. People like the God Stone race were good subordinates. However, once he ate the grass beside him, Ning Shu would hit him again. It was really too difficult. After walking around, the three of them returned to the mess in space. Go Zi looked at Ning Shu. "If I didn't hear wrongly, your companion wants to enslave humans and destroy the balance between the world of living beings and the world of reincarnation." Ning Shu said, "You didn't hear wrongly, but he doesn't have such thoughts now." Go Zi was unhappy. Why is he so stubborn? If anything happened between the world of reincarnation and the world of living beings, Go Zi would be the one suffering the most. Ning Shu said, "Stubbornness is a child's right. He is a child now." Go Zi. What a big child. Go Zi was still worried. Keep an eye on him. He looks like he has a lot of killing power. I'm just a weak dog with no strength. I can't take his attacks. The void creatures were so capricious. Ning Shu nodded. To be honest, he did not really believe that the Origin King could conquer the Origin King, but perhaps the Origin King's opportunity had not arrived yet. God knows why he set conquering the void as his ultimate goal. Of course, even if he succeeded in the end, it might be a long, long time in the future. Now, Go Zi wasn't worried about Li Shuang. He was more worried about his world of reincarnation and the world of living beings. Ning Shu went to visit Li Shuang again and found that Li Shuang's condition was much better. At least she could eat now. Moreover, she only ate expensive food. She ate whatever was nutritious. After a period of time, color had returned to her face, but she still hadn't forgiven Su Ruichu. The two of them frequently communicated with each other, saying, "I beg you to forgive me. I will never forgive you in this lifetime." However, it could be seen that Li Shuang's attitude was gradually softening. Seeing that Ning Shu had come, Li Shuang was very happy. She even gave Li Shuang a small pin. It was very exquisite. There were shining diamonds on it. She pinned it on Ning Shu's collar. "It's very nice." Ning Shu lowered his head and looked at the pin. "Did you buy it yourself or was it given by Su Ruichu?" "Of course it was bought by him." Ning Shu exclaimed in his heart. It seemed that Li Shuang was very willing to use Su Ruichu's things. Ning Shu asked, "Will you leave?" Li Shuang asked back, "Why should I leave?" Li Shuang moved closer to Ning Shu's ear and said, "Since he likes to play this kind of game, I will play it. He likes me to be pretentious. He likes me to forgive him after being hurt. He thinks that he has control over me. Why don't I follow his wishes? Then I will show that I can't leave him in this lifetime. Su Ruichu's conditions are very good. Up until now, I couldn't find a better condition than him." Ning Shu's expression was very surprised. This was probably love. The essence of love was to act. You act, I'll act. For example, Su Ruichu had aborted Li Shuang's child. Logically speaking, this was Su Ruichu's fault. However, Li Shuang made a scene with all her might, torturing herself and Su Ruichu, which had a good effect. At the right time, when the other party had done enough, she would gradually soften and forgive. Some people were not afraid of some things, but they were afraid of a pool of stagnant water with no waves. Ning Shu coughed and said, "I'm afraid this will require acting skills like an Oscar. As long as you are together, you will be in a pretentious state at all times." He looked at the top of Li Shuang's head. The red luck was mixed with black. There was more red now, which meant that the connection between Li Shuang and Su Ruichu was very likely to be unbreakable. Li Shuang smiled and whispered, "Even if I have to pretend, I have to pretend that I am in a lot of pain." Ning Shu was speechless. "I hope you guys are evenly matched. This is simply a psychological battle where you advance and I retreat, and you retreat and I attack." In such a situation, it was still unknown who would win. It seemed that Li Shuang was very calm, much calmer than before. Ning Shu received a small gift and was very happy. He said to Li Shuang, "I am going abroad. Can you let me take care of this dog?" Li Shuang looked at the dog in Ning Shu's arms. She thought about how she had been neglecting the dog all this time. She had no time to take care of herself. Her own affairs were a mess. During the time she was lying on the hospital bed, she thought about things over and over again. Little by little, she did not let go of any details. Some things suddenly exploded in Li Shuang's heart. She suddenly understood. She felt like she had achieved the Tao. "Okay, you take care of it. Take good care of it. It is very obedient and smart." Li Shuang opened her arms. "Let me hug it again." The dog jumped into Li Shuang's arms and wagged its tail. Li Shuang stroked it and touched its forehead. They were very close. "Live well with her. I may not be able to take care of you in the future." The dog barked. Li Shuang handed the dog to Ning Shu. "Then you can go. Maybe I will go abroad to look for you in the future. There will be a chance." Ning Shu was speechless. "Look for me." After leaving the ward, Ning Shu stopped and looked back at the ward. There were bodyguards standing on both sides. He smiled. Su Ruichu had his advantages, but Li Shuang also had her advantages. Living with a clear mind was more important than anything else. On the surface, Li Shuang was a woman who was crazy for love. She was weak and helpless. But in her heart, no one knew. Was this the Black Heart Lotus? It was a little interesting. Ning Shu and the dog left the world of living. The dog returned to the world of reincarnation. He wanted to invite Ning Shu to go with him, but when he thought about how Ning Shu tore his world apart, he gave up the invitation. Chapter 4091. Ning Shu released a few people from the mess in space. After taking a deep breath, Dong Lan said, although the small world is good, it's too dirty. It doesn't have the pure energy of the void. The earthworm was still chopping trees, and the house hadn't been built yet. Why hasn't it been built yet after so long? The Origin King said with dissatisfaction. They had been in the small world for so long. The earthworm ignored him. Ning Shu said, you go and help. Finish it quickly. The Origin King pursed his lips and reluctantly went to help. At this time, the idea of enslaving humans came to mind. Humans were so good at infrastructure. They were simply building houses, roads, and bridges everywhere. At this time, if there were humans here, wouldn't it be a matter of minutes to build a house? Ning Shu took Dong Lan and found a wasteland to start. He brought some vegetable seeds from the small world and prepared to plant them in the void. Carrying a hoe he bought from the small world, he began to dig the ground. He didn't know how these vegetables would grow in the void. Probably after absorbing some special energy, they would grow big and tender. There was meat and birds in the void, but there were no vegetables. Ning Shu also missed the fragrance of vegetables. Occasionally, he could make a vegetable salad or something. He threw the vegetables into the ground, buried them with soil, and watered them. Now, he just had to wait for them to germinate. When the house was built, he would make a fence, and the yard would be full of flowers. He would be the void fairy. The mountain had laid the foundation, and the next step was to build the house. The earthworm was obviously very experienced. It was silent, but its hands moved quickly. Now that it was stronger, it didn't take much effort to lift a big piece of wood. Ning Shu gave the earthworm a thumbs up. Now, the earthworm was more like a human than a human. Eating, drinking, and sleeping were all human habits. Probably because the earthworm had lived with humans for a long time, it was inevitable that it would become more and more like a human. Now, the earthworm probably knew its own situation, so it didn't scold the two-legged monster anymore. Wasn't that just scolding itself? The house was quickly built with everyone's cooperation. It was simple but stylish. It was all made of wood with natural patterns on it. The floor was also paved with wooden planks. Ning Shu poured out everything from the mess in space into the courtyard. Then, she moved the items one by one into the courtyard. Looking at the furnishings in the room, there was no need to mention the satisfaction in her heart. Dong Lan was very envious and also longed to have a room of her own. Embarrassed to mention having a room, Ning Shu said to Dong Lan, there are 2 guest rooms. You can choose one. There were quite a number of rooms. Dong Lan was very happy. She began to decorate her own room. Ning Shu went to decorate Fa Tian's room. Fa Tian's style was simple and cold. The furniture he bought was more robust and angular. Just as she finished setting up, Jin Ji walked into the room, opened the package, and placed it on the bed. Then, she pulled the blanket over the entire package. Jin Ji said to Ning Shu, I want to sleep in this room. Ning Shu. You want to sleep with Fa Tian? Jin Ji nodded. Ning Shu had no choice. He made another small bed in the room. Fa Tian definitely wouldn't squeeze on the same bed as Jin Ji. Ning Shu was a little worried. What should he do if Jean Ji clung to Fatan like this? She was too clingy and didn't have any thoughts of her own. When would they be able to oppose each other? Especially when Jean Ji went crazy after leaving Fatan, Ning Shu felt even more uneasy. Jean Ji was also Fatan. She might lose because of Fatan. Ning Shu could only comfort himself. Jean Ji was still a child, or even a baby. She couldn't leave her mother. She cried the moment she left her mother. It was normal that she hadn't been weaned off milk. It was rare for Jean Ji to be so lively on the bed. A pure smile appeared on her face. Ning Shu also smiled. He turned around and lifted the blanket. He opened the package to see Fatan's situation. The black whip was curled up and motionless. There were all kinds of energy scattered around it. Ning Shu reached out and touched the whip. The energy was attached to the whip. When she rubbed it, the whip didn't respond at all. It seemed that Fatan had really fallen into a deep sleep, and it wasn't an ordinary deep sleep. However, Fatan said that there was a way. It could be said that he could give it a try. Fortune came from danger. However, he didn't expect Fatan to be in such a situation. Fatan hid a lot of things. Ning Shu didn't know that Fatan had such a trick up his sleeve. However, she wasn't angry. The more trump cards Fatan had, the higher his chances of survival. This wasn't something to be angry about. Instead, it was something to be happy about. Ning Shu was so happy that she wanted to jump up and down whenever she thought about having an energy center. Now, she had to protect Fatan. Fatan, who didn't have a clear consciousness, was just an ordinary whip. Ning Shu said to Jean Ji, "You have to look after him and protect him." Jean Ji nodded, indicating that she understood. The furniture and other living facilities were all ready. Ning Shu opened up the courtyard and planted all kinds of flower seeds. After a while, the courtyard would be filled with flowers. It was a comfortable and carefree life. It was simply wonderful. To celebrate our move, let's make something delicious, Ning Shu suggested. The others didn't have any objections. Dong Lan asked, "Do you want to eat fish from the sea?" "I'll go catch some fish." Dong Lan was used to eating cooked food. If she were to return to her race and eat raw food, she might not be able to eat it. Moreover, there was probably no way to cook food in the sea. Even if there was a fire that wouldn't be extinguished in the water, the problem was how to cook it. It wouldn't taste good. Ning Shu said directly, "I don't want eyeballs." Raw eyeballs didn't look appetizing. Cooked ones were even more unappetizing. One could imagine how a dead fish's eyeballs would look like. Dong Lan wasn't convinced. Eyeballs are very delicious. You bite into them and they have a lot of energy. Before Dong Lan left, Ning Shu said to her, "Don't tell your race about Fatan's situation." Dong Lan nodded. "I understand. I want to form an alliance with you, but I don't want to become enemies with you. Even if I want to tell my race about his situation, I have to wait until he wakes up." Ning Shu looked at Dong Lan. This little girl who liked to follow Fatan around when she had nothing to do seemed to be just for fun. However, upon closer inspection, this little girl was quite intelligent. She would be a qualified leader in the future. Dong Lan went to catch fish. Ning Shu brought the earthworm to catch birds. In reality, he wanted to test the earthworm's strength. The earthworm had cultivated an exceptional martial art. He wanted to see what would happen when he faced a void creature. They found a flock of birds. The earthworm looked at the huge bird. "You want me to go?" "That's right, you go. This is considered one of the weaker creatures in the void. If you can't even beat this, then you won't have any chance of winning against the other races." Chapter 4092. Ning Shu felt that her body was full of energy, unlike the weak kidney from before, where she would fall into weakness after using a little strength. Ning Shu felt that she could violently tear apart all the birds present with her bare hands. She could even tear them apart with her bare hands. The earthworm was still a little scared when facing such a huge bird. It felt like he was facing his natural enemy. He was just an earthworm, a worm, and the other party was a bird. Every bite was a worm. The other party was so big, and he was so small. Ning Shu pushed the earthworm. "Go, don't be afraid." The earthworm said, "I think it's too rash to go directly." Ning Shu said, "Don't think too much. Just do it." The earthworm said, I won't. Finally, under Ning Shu's urging, Fatian rushed towards the flock of birds. At first, he was timid. To put it bluntly, as long as he heard that they were creatures of the void, he would feel afraid. The earthworm had a big headache dealing with these birds. He was flustered. His claws were like steel, and even his feathers were almost as sharp as blades. Every slash left a bloody mark. Such feathers could be used as weapons in a small world, and they were even divine weapons. With the feathers covering him, it was not easy for the earthworm to kill him. Just like Ning Shu in the past, it was also not easy for him to kill birds. Therefore, Ning Shu did not laugh at the earthworm. Looking at the earthworm's battered and exhausted appearance, he did not help. The flock of birds would scatter when they saw a strong person. When disaster struck, they would fly away and run for their lives. However, if they met a weak person, the other birds would also come to help. Now, the earthworm was being pecked by a flock of birds. He was covered in blood and was in a sorry state. These birds became even more excited, and the speed at which they attacked the earthworm increased. They even cried out to summon other birds. "Come quickly, there's a weakling here. Everyone, come and bully him." They treated the earthworm as a toy and happily played with him. The earthworm was speechless. "I'm really in trouble. I'm being attacked by so many birds, and there's a person watching from the side. I'm so desperate and embarrassed." However, the earthworm wasn't killed by such an attack. Its body became more and more flexible, at least in the aspect of dodging attacks. It was able to occasionally counterattack. Ning Shu felt that it was about time. It was really good that the earthworm didn't die under the attack of these giant birds. Yes, Ning Shu was even more confident in his peerless martial arts. In the future, he would bring the earthworm to practice every day. These birds were all free coaches. A golden aura shot out and wrapped around the giant bird's claws. Ning Shu rushed over, raised the giant bird, and smashed it on the ground. Ning Shu had already smashed the giant bird to death, leaving a deep crater in the ground. It was clear that the giant bird had withstood a lot of power. The other giant birds were stunned for a moment, then screeched, flapped their wings, and flew away, each fleeing for their lives. This little guy could kill them. They couldn't afford to offend him. The giant birds dispersed in a hubbub, leaving behind fluttering feathers. The scene quieted down at the fastest speed. These giant birds were very sensible. If they could win, they would play. If they couldn't, they would run. As for saving their own kind, it was already dead. How could it save them? It could only survive by instinct. The earthworm, he looked at Ning Shu, who was wiping his sweat, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Why was she so violent? She was simply the pinnacle of violence. Ning Shu said to the earthworm, "Drag it back. You're not strong enough. Come and fight birds again in the future." The earthworm dragged the dead bird with difficulty. Ning Shu asked, "Why didn't you use the aura form? With the aura force and aura form, it should be much easier." The earthworm, "I didn't condense that thing. Although there was enough energy in a lot of stalactites, some things couldn't be condensed just because there was enough energy." On the other hand, Ning Shu was very familiar with the cultivation of peerless martial arts. As long as there was enough energy, he could reach the heavens in one step. Therefore, Ning Shu directly transformed. In the past, he could only transform in a small world, and it had to be a high-level world or a super world with enough energy. He could transform after drinking enough stalactites. Ning Shu, then work hard. When you transform, you should be able to kill a bird. Dong Lan came back with a lot of strange-looking fish. She threw the things on the ground. These fish taste good. The earthworm, it was really challenging his psychological endurance. What kind of monster was this? It was so deformed. The few of them processed the ingredients. Ning Shu pulled out a red carp from a pair of ingredients. Ning Shu looked at the jumping carp. Why did it look so familiar? Ning Shu stared at the carp for a while and asked Dong Lan, "You still eat this?" Dong Lan was puzzled. Yes, why not? Other than her own race, everything else in the sea was real. Ning Shu, damn, Dong Lan's race must be the overlords of the Dong Lan Sea. They must be at the top of the food chain. Ning Shu pointed at the carp. This is also a race. Dong Lan casually glanced at the jumping carp and thought for a while. Oh, I think so. I heard that they don't have much fighting power. How could a doctor be well versed in both the pen and the sword? Why can't he transform into a human? Ning Shu asked Dong Lan. The carp had saved her a few times before. Now that he was reduced to food, she let him go. Dong Lan patted the carp. He was poisoned by me. Ning Shu, the jumping carp, transformed into a human and coughed violently. After transforming, his first reaction was to jump far away from Dong Lan. Ning Shu greeted the carp. "Hi, do you still recognize me?" The carp was green all over. He was poisoned. However, he quickly treated himself. Although he was not completely normal, he was slightly better. He looked at Dong Lan with fear in his eyes, and there was still lingering fear in his heart. Ning Shu also felt that he had underestimated Dong Lan's strength. In the sea, there were probably very few races that could be a match for Dong Lan. Only a race that stood at the top would have the energy and strength to build a crystal palace. If it was a race that was tired and only thought about survival, survival was the most important thing. How could they have the awareness and aesthetics to build and beautify a race? Dong Lan was indifferent to the carp's fear. She did not even look at him. Instead, she excitedly raised the fish in her hand and said to Ning Shu, "I want to eat spicy." She had eaten many snacks in the small world. Sweet, spicy, numbing. It was too satisfying. Ning Shu, the carp, looked at Dong Lan's ferocious look and moved away. After a while, the carp said to Ning Shu, "Thank you for this time." Ning Shu waved her hand. "It's okay." She thought for a while and threw 2 energy bodies to the carp. The medical fees from last time. Chapter 4093. Carp took the energy body and was about to leave after accepting it without any hesitation. Ning Shu urged the carp to stay. "Stay for dinner." The carp looked at Dong Lan and left without hesitation. Ning Shu looked at the pile of fish and couldn't help but ask, "Do these fish have intelligence? Don't tell me they turned into humans like the carp." Ning Shu felt like he was eating a human. Dong Lan was a little confused. "They're all fish." Ning Shu asked, "Do they have intelligence?" Dong Lan shook her head. "I don't think so. Other than that fish, there are no other bodies. They don't have intelligence. Who the hell knew how that fish got into her game?" After preparing the ingredients, the cooking was handed over to Earthworm. There was no other way. Among so many people, only Earthworm's cooking was slightly better. As for the others, Earthworm went to cook silently. Here, it seemed like he was the last in line. He was the weakest. This was too realistic. Ning Shu brought a big bowl of cooked food to Shan Yu so that he could have a taste of the delicious food. Shan Yu tasted it. He didn't like food with a strong taste. Don't make food for me. I don't really care about these things. Ning Shu, oh, I know. You guys only like to sleep. Ning Shu brought the food back. All the food she had prepared had been eaten clean. After eating, one would sleep. Everything was tidied up. Why not go to sleep at this time? Ning Shu returned to his room and lay on the bed to sleep. His surroundings were quiet. Occasionally, there would be voices. Everything was peaceful and beautiful. Ning Shu's heart felt like it was soaking in a hot spring. It was warm and comfortable. This was the kind of life Ning Shu hoped for. Enjoying the peace and quiet. Ning Shu fell into a deep slumber, deep and heavy. When he woke up again, the seeds in the courtyard had already sprouted. Flower branches had grown, leaves had sprouted, and flower buds had bloomed. Ning Shu opened the window and saw the garden filled with fragrance. He took a deep breath. Everywhere was filled with the fragrance of flowers. This was the life of an immortal. Ning Shu went to Fa Tian's room. Fa Tian had not woken up and was still in the form of a whip. It seemed that Fa Tian wouldn't wake up for a long time. Many of the energy bodies no longer had any energy. They shattered into ashes upon contact. Ning Shu cleaned up the ashes and placed some energy bodies next to the god-beating whip. It seemed like it would take a lot of energy to wake Fa Tian up. However, he didn't have much energy left. Ning Shu extended his sinful hands towards the Void King and asked, "What are your plans recently?" The Origin King looked at Ning Shu very warily. "What do you want to do?" "I don't want to enslave humans, so stop talking nonsense." Ning Shu, shameless. Ning Shu said, "I plan to go out and have some fun. Are you coming? You want to enslave humans, right? I'll take you to visit the Tai Shu organization." The Origin King looked at Ning Shu suspiciously and inexplicably. "What do you want to do?" "Actually, it's nothing. I'll take you to have a look, and you have to pay me a guide fee." Ning Shu stated his ultimate purpose. The Origin King stared at Ning Shu with an expression of, "You're crazy," on his face. "Didn't I already pay you a guide fee? Such a big tree isn't even enough for you to build, and you still want to ask me for more. You're really shameless." Ning Shu, "It's done." The Origin King, "What does it have to do with me?" Ning Shu sighed. "You also know that Fa Tian has fallen into a deep sleep. Without enough energy, he won't wake up. So, I need to make money now. Do you have any needs now?" The Origin King took a step back. "I don't need anything. Don't come looking for me. I feel like you're going to eat me." However, the Origin King was also a person who couldn't stay idle. "If you can help me enslave the humans of a world and help me tame these people, I'll give you a lot of energy bodies." Ning Shu jumped up and kicked the Origin King's knee. "I can't do it." Scram, she had finally been able to live a peaceful life. Enslaving the humans of a small world, if she didn't, she could search for energy bodies, but she didn't want to throw herself in. Now that she still had energy bodies in stock, she could go find them elsewhere. She could go to the icebergs. Those icebergs were filled with energy bodies. With her current strength, she could go there. It was just a little difficult to chisel an iceberg, so she needed to find a handy tool. A living person could suffocate to death by urine. The Origin King curled his lips. He was just saying it casually. He didn't expect Ning Shu to agree. "I can lend you my energy bodies, but you owe me a condition. In the future, when I ask you for something, you can't object." Ning Shu crossed his arms in front of his chest. "Ugly, I refuse." What was she thinking? Asking for something and not being able to refuse? What was the difference between that and selling one's body? Perhaps when Fa Tian woke up, he would hammer her head until it exploded. How could he agree to such a stupid request? Origin King, he was so stubborn that he was not worthy of these people's loyalty and respect. In the future, when he became the king of the void, the people by his side would prosper. Their names would shake the void, and when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs would ascend to heaven. The Origin King asked unhappily, "You just look down on me." Ning Shu. "I don't." Origin King, you just look down on me. Otherwise, why don't you put any resources or chips on me? Do you think I can't conquer the void? Ning Shu, aren't you making trouble for no reason? Origin King, speak. Ning Shu, yes, I look down on you. I just don't dare put any resources or chips on you. Are you satisfied? Did you hear what you wanted to hear? Origin King, what kind of suffering was this? He was so angry that he wanted to cry. The Origin King and Ning Shu were attacking each other. I originally planned to lend you a portion of my energy to wake up Fa Tian, but look, I won't lend it to you. Ning Shu immediately slapped his mouth. I was just talking nonsense. Don't take it to heart. Of course, I believe you. Everyone has their own opportunities. You just haven't had your chance yet. Origin King, then go enslave the humans of a world. Ning Shu replied, everything that happened before that was just nonsense. The Origin King had already given up on arguing with Ning Shu. This girl's mouth was full of lies, and nothing she said was true. A woman's mouth was a liar. He was so pitiful. He smashed a large bag of things at Ning Shu's back, causing Ning Shu to fall to the ground. His entire body was pressed down by the bag. I'm lending it to you. When the time comes, you'll have to pay interest. Ning Shu got up from the ground and hugged the bag that was taller and stronger than him. He smiled and asked the Origin King, how do you calculate the interest? When the time comes, I'll pay half a bag of interest. Ning Shu, that this interest was really high. However, he really needed the energy body now. Nothing was more important than Fa Tian waking up. Ning Shu nodded, don't worry, I'll definitely pay you back when the time comes. The Origin King looked at the smiling Ning Shu and clicked his tongue. Too realistic, too realistic. Chapter 4094. Ning Shu dragged a bag of energy bodies into Fa Tian's room and directly put Fa Tian into his pocket. The feeling of being surrounded by money was really beautiful. With the previous energy bodies and the current energy bodies, Ning Shu felt that it was enough to wake Fa Tian up. The Origin King stood at the door, leaned against it, and said, didn't you say you were going to take me to visit the Grand Uncle's organization? Take me there now, you have to keep your word. Ning Shu, this child had learned to be cunning, borrowing the money first before saying such things. Ning Shu asked, I'll take you there to see how many energy bodies are worth. The Origin King's eyes widened, didn't I lend you my energy bodies? What do you want? Ning Shu shook his head, that's not the same. You lent them to me. Do I have to return them to you later? Plus, there's half a bag of interest. That's not possible. The Origin King said, you're really good at calculating. You being so calculative is too hurtful. Ning Shu snorted, if you're not calculative, why do you want me to take you there for free? If a crow said that a pig was black, he would not be so calculative. The Origin King rolled his eyes and took out a small bag of energy bodies. Ning Shu took the energy bodies and said with a grin, I think you should thank me for asking you for something. The Origin King said. Shameless, should I thank you for accepting my energy bodies? Ning Shu nodded, yes, if I had no desires, the one who would have a headache would be you. You can still use your energy bodies to tempt me now, but one day, your energy bodies can no longer tempt me. No matter how many energy bodies you take out, I won't do anything for you. Haven't you heard of the phrase, one can be strong without desires? The Origin King thought about it carefully and really could not refute it, so he said mockingly, I should really thank you for needing my energy bodies. Ning Shu said generously, "You're welcome, we're friends after all." Before leaving, Ning Shu instructed Jinji to take good care of Fa Tian. Fa Tian was now a fragile baby, a baby who could not control himself. If someone took it away or destroyed it, the Heaven Conqueror would not be able to fight back. He might even be killed in his sleep. Jinji nodded with a serious expression. "Don't worry. I'll protect him." Ning Shu didn't doubt Jinji's strength, but when he went crazy, he couldn't differentiate between friend and foe. After that, the two of them set off to the surroundings of the Sea of Laws. The tour did not require them to enter the organization to tour, but to experience it from the outside. Although Ning Shu wanted to test his strength, it was very dangerous to go deep into enemy territory. Now that he had a dantian and power, he wanted to test the limits of this power. The plain where the Sea of Laws was born was so magnificent, and from afar, one could see the ant-like army patrolling the entire Sea of Laws. From afar, the unrest plain looked like a huge crystal beehive. Ning Shu pointed to the army and said, "See? This is a well-trained army. They have been trained for a long time and have enough resources. This kind of resource needs to be cycled continuously. If you build such a team, what would you give them?" The Origin King said matter-of-factly, "Of course it would be energy bodies." Ning Shu asked again, "If humans can't use energy bodies, what if a trace of energy body can make them explode?" The Origin King said, "Then we'll find energy that humans can use. Don't we have spirit stones? But this kind of low-level energy doesn't even exist in the void. Where can you find it? There are small worlds, but do you want to find spirit stones in every small world?" Ning Shu asked. The Origin King said, "Of course we'll let these humans find it themselves. After they find it, we'll reward them and collect the rest." Ning Shu asked again, "Are you training a powerful team to conquer the void or small worlds?" The Origin King rolled his eyes at Ning Shu, "Of course it's to conquer the void. But the energy absorbed can only allow humans to call the wind and summon the rain in a small world, but not in the void. This kind of energy is very weak. I saw those human souls. There are restrictions. They are born for the sake of their small world, so their strength is not strong in the void. This organization gives them a direction to become strong, but this strength has a bottleneck. They are strong, but not strong." Ning Shu thought about it carefully and felt that this organization was really too smart. The Origin King looked at Ning Shu, "Can you be direct? Enslaving humans requires a lot of effort, material, and financial resources, but you won't get the same return. Because the restrictions are too great, it's impossible for a small world to make humans too strong." The Origin King snorted, "Don't think I don't know you're protecting those humans in the small world. In the end, you just don't want me to touch those humans." The Origin King's expression was very puzzled. "Do the humans and forests in those worlds have anything to do with you?" Ning Shu waved his hand, "I don't, I'm doing this from your point of view and from your own interests." Seeing the Sea of Law again, Ning Shu actually felt like a lifetime had passed. The Sea of Law was still as calm as ever. This kind of calmness was even more disturbing than not being calm. If it moved, it would at least be alive, but it was motionless like this. Could it be that the divine tree beside the Sea of Law had grown very tall and strong? Some of its branches and leaves hung down beside the Sea of Law, adding a trace of vitality to the Sea of Law. The Origin King looked at the Sea of Law and widened his eyes. "What is this? A small world birthplace that is about to die. It looks so painful." Not only did the Origin King feel it, but perhaps because she had a small world birthplace in her body, she also felt the fluctuations under the calmness of the Sea of Law. These were fluctuations of pain. This Sea of Law should have disappeared, but the granduncles used all kinds of methods to extend its life. It was alive, but it was painful. If one day, such a situation happened to the peerless martial art, Ning Shu felt that he might not do this. It would be better to just let the peerless martial art die. After all, it had lived for so long, it was enough. Moreover, she did not have the ability and resources to keep the peerless martial art alive. To be able to keep a small world birthplace alive, the granduncles were really very capable. If it was him, in all fairness, Ning Shu felt that he could not do it. She just wanted to be happy while she was alive. The granduncles were very persistent. They had lived for so many years, but they did not feel bored. Instead, they tried their best to live. How interesting was their life that they were so reluctant to die. Ning Shu suddenly wanted to plant a tree. Should he go to the cub house and ask the old man divine tree for a sapling to plant? If he planted it in front of his house, he could comprehend the divine patterns when he had nothing to do. If he went to the old man divine tree's consciousness, he would not be able to grasp the patterns at all. Chapter 4095. Ning Shu didn't have any talent in comprehending divine runes. To be precise, Ning Shu wasn't a smart person. They were both in the divine tree's consciousness, but Fa Tian could catch them one by one, while she couldn't. This was the limitation of talent. 9 points of talent and 1 point of hard work could easily succeed, but Ning Shu had to work very hard. Not having talent was really fatal. Then she would use time to make up for it. Fortunately, she had a long lifespan. If she only had the lifespan of an ordinary human, Ning Shu felt that she might not be able to comprehend anything. The Origin King didn't want to stay beside the Sea of Laws. Let's go, I don't want to watch anymore. Ning Shu nodded and turned to leave. From the corner of his eye, he saw a figure standing on the other side of the Sea of Laws. From afar, the figure was very small. Even if it was a very small figure, it could be seen that it was dark and small. It was definitely Grand Uncle. Standing beside the Sea of Laws and staring at it, his heart was probably very complicated. Ning Shu said to the Origin King, "If you really want to walk the path of a human, you can ask Grand Uncle for some advice." The Origin King was surprised. "Do you think he will pay attention to me?" He had beaten him before and even took away the spring. Right, where was his spring? No wonder he felt that something was wrong here. Death chi and life chi intertwined. Needless to say, it was very strange. My spring should be nearby. Find it and take it away, the Origin King said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu glanced at the figure in the distance. "Do you think we can take the spring away?" The Origin King was immediately dispirited. What the fuck was this? It was clearly his thing. The robber stole his thing, but he couldn't take it out. Ning Shu said, "If we can't take it back for the time being, then we can ask Grand Uncle for some benefits. If it doesn't work, we can ask Grand Uncle for some advice." Ning Shu controlled her restless heart. She wanted to fight with Grand Uncle to test her strength. In her dantian was a small, swimming golden dragon. It looked small, but once it was released, it would be a huge and majestic golden dragon that possessed immense power. If she were to fight with Li Wen, with her current strength, it was hard to say who would win. She could obtain an endless supply of energy from the outside world. Moreover, the peerless martial arts also provided power, as long as the body could withstand the power provided by the peerless martial arts. Therefore, Ning Shu felt that he would die miserably. He would definitely not be beaten to a pulp. Li Wen had destroyed the black box that he desired. Even if Ning Shu had the key, he would not ask for the box from Ning Shu again. He would not attack him for no reason. Because it was worthless and a waste of energy. As for Li Wen, he obviously didn't put Ning Shu in his eyes. Right now, Ning Shu yearned for a fight. He yearned for it very much. Ning Shu and the Origin King were whispering to each other as Grand Uncle walked towards them step by step above the Sea of Laws. Floating in the air, he stopped before the two of them. Ning Shu was so excited that his body trembled slightly. "Come on, let's fight." Grand Uncle looked at the two of them coldly. What are you doing? The Origin King immediately said, I'm here for my spring. Give it back to me. Ning Shu clicked his tongue in his heart. What a stupid conversation. Sure enough, Grand Uncle ignored him. He just raised his eyebrows and looked at Ning Shu. What are you here for? Are you here to gloat? Ning Shu shook his head. The disappearance of anything or life is worth being happy about. Of course, you are an exception. Ning Shu added. If something happened to Grand Uncle, she would definitely eat another giant bird. Grand Uncle's expression did not change. Obviously, he understood Ning Shu's mouth very well. There was no need to talk about retorting. Ning Shu said again, he's here for the spring. You snatched someone else's spring, so you should at least give him something. Even if you want to force him to sell, you should at least give him money. The Origin King immediately refuted Ning Shu. When did I say I was going to sell it? That's mine. I won't sell it. Ning Shu wanted to jump up and kick the Origin King's knee. The Grand Uncle looked lazy and sleepy. The kid in front of him couldn't affect him at all. He said indifferently, what do you want? Ning Shu asked the Origin King, what do you want? Origin King, Father doesn't want anything. I just want Father's spring. Give Father's spring back. Ning Shu. You might not be able to get your spring back in this lifetime. Not to mention when Grand Uncle was alive, even if Grand Uncle died along with the Sea of Laws, your spring would not have any vitality. Life force was not inexhaustible, and it would eventually be exhausted. Things that entered Grand Uncle's pocket could rarely be returned. The Origin King had too little contact with Grand Uncle and did not understand what kind of person he was. The Origin King still wanted to say something, but being stared at by Grand Uncle made his scalp tingle. He still insisted, I want the spring. Ning Shu was too lazy to pay attention to him and dragged him away, looking back at the calm Sea of Laws. Origin King, why are you pulling me away? I'm not going, I want the spring. Ning Shu let go of the Origin King. Then go, I won't stop you. Origin King, then I won't go. Ning Shu took the Origin King around the entire birthplace and gave him a rough introduction. The Origin King's face was sullen, but Ning Shu was the only one talking, so he did not express his opinion. Ning Shu, after seeing it, do you feel anything? Origin King, I don't feel anything, I can do it. Ning Shu gave him a thumbs up. Okay, you can do it. The Origin King's mouth was extremely stubborn, the kind that would not change no matter what, but he did not mention enslaving humans to Ning Shu again. Even enslaving them would require a lot of manpower and material resources to manage these humans. The Origin King was alone, and he had no foundation at all. On the other hand, the Grand Uncle had accumulated a large number of void creatures. More importantly, special departments were not actually controlled by souls. For example, Sang Liang controlled the important main system. And Sang Liang was undoubtedly on the side of Grand Uncle and was loyal to him. Although this organization was made up of souls, it did not mean that souls had the final say in the organization. Origin King, is that all? Ning Shu, what else do you want? The Origin King curled his lips. Ning Shu said, you go back first. The Origin King asked, what are you doing? Why did you send me away? What do you want to do behind my back? Ning Shu. Fuck off. Origin King, why do you keep staring at your cheating wife every day? What does it have to do with you? Ning Shu, I'm going to see an acquaintance. You don't know the people I know, so why are you following me? Origin King, you and I are going to see the world, and who do you know here? How do you know them? You don't have a good relationship with Grand Uncle. In this organization, is there anyone who has a good relationship with you? Chapter 4096. Ning Shu took a deep breath and said loudly. It's none of your business. Ning Shu ignored the Origin King, but the Origin King followed behind Ning Shu like a shadow. No matter what Ning Shu said, he followed behind. Ning Shu had said too much, but his pitiful face was enough to make one's teeth ache. If he wanted to follow here, then let him follow. Ning Shu acted as if there was no such person next to him. Ning Shu looked for the mark he once made. That mark could lead him to the palace of His Excellency. Now Ning Shu couldn't find the former world of reincarnation. This world of reincarnation was now under the control of the little devil. He didn't know if the skeleton inside was still there. Now he wanted to find His Excellency. The little devil should still have some connections with him. After finding the location of the space node, Ning Shu wanted to enter the world of reincarnation, but he was repelled by a force. Obviously, His Excellency in the world of reincarnation felt an external threat and directly refused Ning Shu's entry. Ning Shu didn't care. He wanted to go in. He stretched out his hand and tore a crack in the world of reincarnation. His method was very simple and crude. Of course, this also proved that Ning Shu's strength had increased. If it was the previous Ning Shu, he would definitely not be able to enter after being blocked by His Excellency. The Origin King followed them in. Ning Shu's toes stepped on the black sand. In front of them was a palace that towered into the clouds. It was pitch black and had huge pillars. His Excellency, wearing an elegant tuxedo, stood on the steps of the palace. Zi Sang stared at Ning Shu below the steps. Obviously, the current His Excellency didn't know Ning Shu. As for whether Grand Uncle and the others told His Excellency about Ning Shu's identity, it was unknown. Even if they did, His Excellency had never seen Ning Shu. Seeing a rude person enter his territory, His Excellency's face didn't look good. His face was pale. Under the black tuxedo, he looked like a vampire. Ning Shu looked up at His Excellency on the high platform and raised his hand to greet him. Hi. Seeing these people again, Ning Shu felt like it was her previous life. Her memories and feelings had become much more shallow. She could no longer feel the feelings she had back then. Facing His Excellency again, Ning Shu's heart was calm even though he was looking down at her from a high vantage point. She faced His Excellency with a new attitude. However, Ning Shu was a little disappointed that she didn't see the little devil. However, she could wait. She had a lot of time now. His Excellency's business of His Excellency said, "Who are you, and what's your purpose here?" His Excellency of His Excellency was of His Excellency, his of His Excellency, His Excellency of his reincarnation of His Excellency's his. His Excellency frowned and looked at Ning Shu. "Who are you?" Ning Shu waved her hand and said, "I'm not here for you. I'm here for someone else, the one with a hooked tail." His Excellency immediately knew who she was talking about. His expression became more serious. "Why are you looking for him? What's the matter?" His Excellency's first thought was to seek revenge. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come here. "If there's anything, I'll talk to him." "I won't talk to you. You can call him back." His Excellency and the little devil must have a special way of contacting each other. Ning Shu saw a huge field of flowers next to the palace. These flowers were all watered by His Excellency's soul fluid or human bones. The smell was very strong. The strong fragrance of the flowers was mixed with a fishy smell. It was so fragrant that it almost suffocated His Excellency. His Excellency saw the look in Ning Shu's eyes and casually picked a flower and handed it to Ning Shu. "I don't care what grudges you have with him. He's not here now." Ning Shu looked at the blood-red flower and couldn't help but frown. His Excellency still liked to give flowers as usual. There was a small, white flower in his chest pocket. Ning Shu took the flower and handed it to the Origin King next to her. The Origin King took it without even thinking about it, but then he suddenly felt something and threw the flower away. "What is this thing? Why are you giving me such trash?" The flower had a very sticky feeling in his hand and was extremely disgusting. Was His Excellency someone who needed to look at other people's faces? Ning Shu, His Excellency. Ning Shu handed the flower to His Excellency. He originally thought that His Excellency would like this kind of strange feeling, but it seemed that His Excellency was a normal person and didn't like dark things. It was very disgusting. His Excellency had already given up talking to Ning Shu. Since you're willing to wait, then you can wait. He turned around and entered the main hall. To be precise, this should be a temple. Ning Shu said, those who come are guests, yet you want to throw us outside. Can't you be a bit more hospitable? His Excellency looked indifferently at the unreasonable Ning Shu. Was he crazy? I asked you what you wanted, but you didn't say anything. You want me to be hospitable? Fuck off. Ning Shu, since you don't welcome me, then hurry up and find little fiend. I'll go find him. His Excellency was very suspicious. It might be a girl that little fiend had provoked outside, and a chubby girl at that. His Excellency's appearance was very cold, but his heart was restless and filled with all kinds of guesses. A child had brought an adult to find trouble, and His Excellency, who was constantly wiping his hands, had been treated as a parent. Now, His Excellency also had to set up a formation. Ning Shu sat down, the black stone floor reflecting his shadow. Ning Shu yawned and planned to stay here until little fiend came back. If little fiend couldn't stand it anymore, he would definitely find little fiend and bring him back. If His Excellency fought with him, that would be even better. Ning Shu was very eager to fight now to test his strength. Moreover, His Excellency's body was not weak. He was holding a trident and had a huge body. If he fought with His Excellency, he would be able to use it as a reference. Ning Shu's bright and sad 45-degree angle made him really want to fight. He was as lonely as snow. Ning Shu turned to look at His Excellency. What do you think of your strength? Why did he have to fight with others? He could have fought with the people around him. His Excellency, raised his chin and said, of course I'm very strong. Very few people in the void can kill me. Ning Shu nodded, let's fight when we go back. His Excellency's expression stiffened, why should we fight? We'll eat too much. Ning Shu nodded, yes, I'll eat too much. Not long after, a black dot in the distance flew towards the palace at an extremely fast speed, like a cannonball, the ground trembling. The person who came had a hooked tail, a slender body, and slightly bulging muscles, looking very explosive. When he saw Ning Shu, he was stunned for a moment before directly entering the palace. Ning Shu was not in a hurry. Soon, His Excellency and little fiend would come out. Chapter 4097. His Excellency thought that the little devil had provoked someone outside. When the little devil saw Ning Shu, she thought that His Excellency had picked him up from somewhere. After all, His Excellency had raised him, and now he was raising someone else. It was normal. They both thought that it was each other's business. The little devil entered the palace and said to His Excellency, someone is looking for you outside. His Excellency, someone is looking for you outside. The little devil was confused, looking for me? How could he be looking for me? The abyssal prefect nodded. That's right, he's here to look for you. He specifically mentioned that he's here to look for you. The little devil was even more confused, but I don't know them. His Excellency and the little devil came out, and Ning Shu greeted them with a sweet smile, hi. The little devil and His Excellency both looked indifferent, but they were still on guard. Those who could stay in this world were not weak, especially His Excellency, who saw Ning Shu tearing the plane apart so violently. The little devil spoke first and asked, I heard that you are looking for me. Ning Shu nodded, yes, I am looking for you. Let's go out and talk. His Excellency, you can say it here. Ning Shu tilted her head and said to His Excellency, but I think you should leave. His Excellency, that what exactly was it that he had to leave? Ning Shu waved her hand and said, "It's okay if I don't leave." His Excellency. I thought it was something important. Aren't you tired after playing around like this? Ning Shu said to the little devil, "I want to enter your world of reincarnation." Now Ning Shu had no control over the world of reincarnation, and he couldn't find out where the world of reincarnation was. If he could find the world of reincarnation, he could enter it directly, and he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble to find the little devil. The little devil's face went blank for a moment, and she was obviously confused about why she made such a request. Why did she want to enter the world of reincarnation? Ning Shu said directly, "I used to be the owner of the world of reincarnation, what's wrong with going back to take a look?" The little devil retorted without thinking, "You are not the master of the world of samsara. In the past, the owner of the world of reincarnation was just a soul. Now, a random person popped out and claimed to be the owner of the world of reincarnation. It was only because the other party was a child. If the other party was an adult, they would definitely start a fight." Ning Shu said, "My name is Ning Shu. This name doesn't prove everything." The abyssal prefect looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. The current Ning Shu was nothing like the Ning Shu of the past. The little devil blurted out, "You're not dead." The person who had died suddenly appeared in front of him with a new face. His first reaction was disbelief. He couldn't believe it at all. The Origin King turned to look at Ning Shu. What the hell was she talking about? How did she have such a wide circle of friends? She knew people everywhere. On the other hand, why didn't these people recognize her? He felt that this little girl was hiding something from him. At least, the Origin King was scratching his heart and lungs. He wanted to know about Ning Shu. He wanted to know what she had done in the past. He felt that although she was young, she seemed to have experienced a lot. Ning Shu brushed his hair with his hand. "Yes, I died, but later I woke up again. You don't have to doubt my identity. When you were born in the world of reincarnation, it was the abyssal prefect who took you there to raise you. I didn't come back to take back the world of reincarnation, but to take a look." The little devil still felt it was inconceivable. Her eyes were filled with suspicion. The abyssal prefect said, "Just take her to take a look." Just taking a look was nothing. Even if she wanted to take back the world of reincarnation, it didn't matter. The abyssal prefect wanted the little devil to manage so many worlds of reincarnation for him, but he had his own responsibilities. If she wanted to take back the world of reincarnation, this might be a good thing. The little devil frowned, but still said, "Follow me." He casually pointed and a black hole slowly appeared. He took the lead and entered. Ning Shu followed closely behind him. The Origin King followed behind Ning Shu and entered the black hole. The abyssal prefect didn't follow. The black hole slowly closed. Entering the world of reincarnation again, it felt strange yet familiar. Many places were familiar, but also strange. Some things were different from the things in his memory. However, there were many more souls than before. It looked very crowded. Moreover, many worlds of reincarnation had evolved. It had become a huge group of worlds of reincarnation. Ning Shu mainly came to see the skeletons. Now, all the skeletons were shining with golden light. If they didn't speak, it was impossible to tell who was who. Ning Shu looked at these skeletons. The little devil asked, "Do you want to go over and say hello?" Ning Shu shook his head, "Forget it. Who do you want to say hello? They probably wouldn't have any contact in the future. After all, he couldn't come here all the time." The little devil didn't say anything. Ning Shu walked around the world of reincarnation. Some places were already unfamiliar. Ning Shu counted carefully. When the bones followed him, there were a lot more. It should be because the little devil increased the number of skeletons after so many days. After all, there were more skeletons in the world of reincarnation. With so many skeletons gathered together, Ning Shu couldn't recognize who was who. After seeing enough, Ning Shu left the world of reincarnation. The little devil finally came out of the black hole. The few of them stood on the high platform of the palace. The little devil looked at Ning Shu. How did you survive? Ning Shu spread his hands. I don't know. I seem to have slept for a very long time and suddenly woke up. In short, Ning Shu didn't know how he survived. The little devil raised his eyebrows. There was such a good thing, coming back from the dead. After seeing the world of reincarnation, Ning Shu felt that he had accomplished another thing. Before, he couldn't come back because he was too weak. Now, he was eager to find someone to fight and dared to run around. It would be best if he could fight with her. This was the confidence of strength. With enough confidence, he dared to do anything. With strength, he wouldn't be afraid of the slightest thing. Ning Shu waved goodbye to Fa Tian and the little devil, then tore open the bit wall and left with the Origin King. His Excellency and the little devil looked at each other. Their faces were full of doubts. Obviously, they didn't know whether Ning Shu's sudden appearance was real or fake. He just strolled around and left. Outside the world of reincarnation, the Origin King asked, "Where are you going next?" Ning Shu thought for a moment, "Do you want to break into the headquarters of this organization?" The super space was full of souls coming and going. Ning Shu now remembered that he still had 2 restaurants in the City of Laws. Chapter 4098. Now that she had disappeared, those 2 restaurants were ownerless and must have been snatched by someone else. Whoever had the ability would be able to snatch them. Just like in the past, there was a restaurant that actually belonged to a woman who had withdrawn from the quest, but she managed to obtain it later. What was that woman's name again? Too much time had passed and Ning Shu could not remember her name. Moreover, since his rebirth, only his memories had been reborn, not his body. Some things were already very vague, and this kind of memory was useless. If he did not remember, then so be it. Besides, he was already dead, so his memories had no value. Even if someone did not remember Ning Shu felt that it was a very normal thing. The Origin King looked at Ning Shu's eager appearance. Obviously, he wanted to go, but Ning Shu was asking him. The Origin King directly said, "Not going, not interested." Ning Shu nodded, not disappointed at all. He was not asking for the Origin King's opinion, so it was up to him to go or not. Ning Shu, then I'll go by myself, you can go back by yourself. The Origin King. Then why did you ask me? Do you have to embarrass me like this? Fuck. Ning Shu was preparing to go to the City of Laws. This place was almost the same as going deep into the enemy's belly. Once she entered, she was likely to be caught like a turtle in a jar. All kinds of barriers would cover her, trapping her inside. Thinking about it, it was both dangerous and exciting. Ning Shu did not call the Origin King and left by himself. The Origin King was so angry that he could only give up his face and follow Ning Shu. Ning Shu glanced around and did not say anything that would damage the Origin King's face, simply saying, "That place is particularly lively. I used to be someone who owned a property, but now it has become someone else's." The Origin King glanced at her and breathed a sigh of relief. "You bought a property, so why isn't it yours?" Ning Shu shrugged her shoulders. "I'm no longer a member of the organization, so how can I still have a property? Someone else's territory has the final right of interpretation. In other words, they could take it back at any time. What's more, Ning Shu wouldn't be able to use the things he earned from the restaurant. It was meaningless to struggle with others for things that he didn't need. If she could earn energy bodies from the restaurant, she might consider opening a restaurant. To go to a law city, Ning Shu was a lot more cautious. The law city was actually a man-made space. It was a huge man-made space that allowed mission enforcers to rest and trade inside. Moreover, he could also comprehend the power of the laws. However, the power of the laws had weakened by a lot. What was left was just a remnant. This power came from the Sea of Laws, and now that there was a problem with the Sea of Laws, he naturally would not waste the power of the Sea of Laws. When he entered a city of laws, he would definitely be detected and monitored. Currently, the relationship between Ning Shu and the organization was a little delicate. Last time, a bottle of water had put them in a delicate balance for the time being. However, with a little external force, this delicate balance would be broken. Ning Shu guessed that if he entered a law city, he would definitely be monitored. Sang Liang might not take action, but if he caused trouble in the law city, he might be expelled. Ning Shu filtered through everything in his mind and found that there might not be any danger in entering a law city, as long as he didn't cause trouble. Therefore, Ning Shu brought the Origin King and entered the law city in a domineering manner. The law city was noisy, so she chose to enter a law city of time. In the past, it was very difficult to enter those cities, such as the spatial city, but now, perhaps because her body could ignore these laws, she hardly felt any difficulty. It was like an ant having to work hard to climb to a castle made of sand, but a person could directly destroy the castle with a punch. This was the difference. The Origin King looked curiously at the human souls coming and going. Not only were there human souls, but there were also all kinds of strange souls, but these souls all seemed to have wisdom. Not only did humans have wisdom, but also some creatures from higher planes. As time passed, the remaining law power in the law city became less and less, and it was almost impossible to feel the power of the laws. It was likely that in the future, all the missions would no longer be able to comprehend the laws. If they had comprehended the laws before, it would be fine, but later mission takers might not even have seen the appearance of the laws. Unless they relied on their own amazing talent to forcefully comprehend the laws, this was too difficult. The existence of the law city was to give these mission takers a path, a simple step. It was not easy to climb, but it was better than not having a path. The city had not changed for 10,000 years, and even the bluestone slabs under his feet were still the same. It seemed that the lines had not changed much and were still as deep as before. Although the Origin King had been to human small worlds, that was the modern world. Now that he saw the ancient city, he was a little curious and looked around. The streets were full of stalls, and the shop signs were made of cloth. They were vertically arranged and looked different from modern cities. Ning Shu went straight to the Chongsam man's hotel and remembered that he had no merit. Eating here required merit. Ning Shu walked into the shop and saw the Chongsam man talking to a female mission taker again. He was flirting again. As usual, Ning Shu thought that the Chongsam man might not be there anymore. However, the Chongsam man's level was not good enough. Compared to the big bosses above, he was definitely slightly inferior. However, for the mission takers below, he was much more at ease. Even if they were doing missions, they would basically not die in the mission world. Besides, there were so many items, and the Chongsam man was not short of money. Nothing seemed to have changed. The dead were dead, and the living continued to live. Ning Shu took back the foot that had stepped through the door. She had no merit now, so she would not go in to eat. Her family bought a lot of these things, and the earthworms could make them. She did not want to waste this money. Absolutely not. Ning Shu turned around and left hatefully. She did not intend to acknowledge the Chongsam man. When the time came, she would have to explain why she had not appeared for so long. She would have to say that she had been killed by a dog, and she would have to explain why she was fine now. The Chongsam man was a gentleman's friend. When they met, she was very happy to rush over and say that she was not dead. From coming in until now, Ning Shu had not encountered any danger, but there was a monitoring gaze following her like a shadow. Ning Shu did not care about this gaze. Ning Shu did not intend to make a move in the city of law. He took the Origin King to visit the city. The Origin King was very curious about the stalls. He had never seen such large stalls, which formed a special style. There were all kinds of strange things, and the Origin King hoped to find some treasure in these stalls. This feeling was very interesting. If he picked up a bargain, he would be even happier. He could only update when he got home on the 9th, so he could not update for a while. Chapter 4099. The Origin King was shopping with the mood of picking up scraps, but his vision was very high. What was precious to others and good for a soul task enforcer, the Origin King did not think it was good. After shopping for a long time, he did not find what he wanted and shook his head in disappointment. There was nothing good on such a big street. Ning Shu curled his lips. What do you want? He had everything he wanted, and there was also the underground world to help him accumulate wealth. The strength of a soul task enforcer was here, so there was no way to get good things. Moreover, there were some things that soul task enforcers could not use. The things here were prepared for soul task enforcers, not for the Origin King. Ning Shu wanted to see what his restaurant was now, but after thinking about it carefully, there was no need. Do you still want to shop? I'm going back. Ning Shu wanted to go back into retreat. Now that Fa Tian was in retreat and accumulating strength, he also had to work hard. He had just formed his Dan Tian, so the next step was to stabilize his strength. Moreover, his consciousness was always being pulled out of his body, obviously being pulled into a small world. The will of some small worlds was very strong and needed him very much. He had been shopping with the Origin King for so long, so it was time to go. The Origin King's expression was very hesitant. Obviously, he did not want to leave so early, so he said, I still want to walk around for a while. I haven't understood how this organization works yet. There are some details I need to understand. Ning Shu snorted. The Origin King had not given up on enslaving humans. With his brain and ability, there was no way he could control so many humans. With such a large group, the Origin King would definitely suffer a backlash. If he could not pick up this bowl of rice and had not eaten it yet, there would not be a good result. Ning Shu asked, Is there anything you don't understand? Tell me. The Origin King tilted his head, There are many things I don't understand. Ning Shu. Not understanding is right. Even drawing a gourd with a ladle might not be able to do it. In any case, Ning Shu felt that he could not do it. Even if he had stayed in the organization for a while, it was still a long time. Up until now, she had spent almost all of her time in the organization. She could not replicate such a large organization. Firstly, it was a matter of ability. The leader had to have an absolutely calm and even cold heart, but she did not. Secondly, he was really lazy. He really didn't want to do it. It was impossible for him to recruit talents. He could only occasionally enter the small world to make a living. The Origin King looked at him for a long time before finally sighing, his expression somewhat helpless, but he still stubbornly said, I think I can do it. Regarding this, Ning Shu did not express any opinion. If he said that he wanted to extinguish the Origin King's ambitions, the Origin King would lose face and insist on experimenting to prove himself. It was very likely that the humans of a small world would suffer because of such an experiment. The stronger the person, the greater the impact. It was like a child pouring boiling water into an ant's nest when he was bored. To the child, it was a game, a pastime. He might even observe the ants struggling in the boiling water and wonder if the ants were cooked. But for a nest of ants, this was simply a disaster. It was a terrifying disaster. It was a very tragic thing. They should not disturb each other. The Origin King was very annoyed. Seeing that Ning Shu was not speaking, he immediately said, Are you looking down on me? Do you think I can't do it? Do you think I can't compare to Granduncle? Ning Shu, aren't you a little too arrogant? How can you compare yourself to Granduncle? Although Ning Shu really wanted to insult Grand Uncle, in terms of strength, he really couldn't. The Origin King. You're not saying anything. Is that what you think? Then he said, although I can't make it on such a large scale, I can make a prototype and then slowly expand it. Ning Shu, go ahead, I support you. It doesn't matter if you fail. Come on, I have faith in you. Ning Shu's face showed an exaggerated and pretentious expression, making people want to vomit. The Origin King's expression was very disgusting. Really? However, after that, the Origin King did not question and insisted on going to the small world to catch people, but he had another strange idea. I want to make a beautiful palace, just like the crystal palace of that girl's race. Let's go catch some humans to build it. Human infrastructure was very powerful. Although it couldn't be like this organization, it could still use humans to build houses. There were no good houses in the void at all. For example, the Divine Stone Clan was still lying on the ground. Ning Shu said lightly, there is a saying among humans, when heaven is about to give a great responsibility to a great man, it must first torment his mind, toil his muscles and bones, starve his skin, and empty his body. The Origin King, speak human language. Ning Shu, your dream is to conquer the void, but now you're starting to enjoy it. It's good enough that you have a house to live in. Why do you want to build a new house? From now on, you have to work hard for your ideals and temper your will. The Origin King was silent for a while before a look of enlightenment appeared on his face. Oh, so this is chicken soup for the soul. When you're tired and bitter, you tell yourself that this is a test from heaven. I have the conditions to make my life better. Why should I torment my mind, toil my muscles and bones, and starve my skin? Ning Shu, I'm actually speechless, my fists are getting hard. The Origin King snapped his fingers, and with a flash of inspiration, he said to Ning Shu, I suddenly found a way to conquer the entire void. Ning Shu looked at the Origin King's glowing face. It was as if a huge beam of light was shining on his face. It was so dazzling that he felt like he was about to bleed. He looked at Ning Shu, waiting for Ning Shu to play the fool. Ning Shu asked with difficulty, what method? The Origin King raised his hands and raised his head, looking very Chinibu. I'm really a genius. I actually came up with such a way to conquer the void. Ning Shu tried hard to control himself. He did not roll his eyes or punch the Origin King. The Origin King looked at the entire void. This was his territory. I want to find a lot of humans. Ning Shu could not control himself and rolled his eyes. Was he going to make life difficult for the creatures of this small world? I want to find a lot of humans to build houses for the creatures of the void. I want to let the creatures of the void live in beautiful and comfortable houses. I want to let the creatures of the void experience a good life. Once they experience a comfortable house and all kinds of comfortable things, they will never be able to go back. They will rush to my house like a flock of ducks. That way, the energy bodies of the void and all kinds of good things will belong to me. I can even issue money like humans. With houses and money, the creatures of the void will not seek refuge with me for a better life. Chapter 4100. Ning Shu looked at the Origin King with a complicated expression. If the Origin King really succeeded, the void creatures would fall into endless competition. In particular, the lifespan of the void creatures was longer, so a group of social animals with extremely long lifespans would be born. For a better life, they would be conscientious and work hard at the risk of sudden death. The leisurely atmosphere in the void would probably not exist. If it was a powerful race, it would be fine, as they could get something by paying a little price, but if it was a weak race, it would simply be torture. Other races had palaces to symbolize their status, but the weak races did not have such strength, and the gap between them was widened. This included dignity, wealth, status. The void might become like the human world. Previously, everyone slept on the ground, lived in caves, or built a simple shelter. Everyone was barren, but they were all the same. But one day, it was different, and the gap created, the void only cared about one thing, and that was strength. If the Origin King changed, then strength, wealth, and even appearance would be considered. The depressed environment could be imagined. The void creatures lived longer than humans, so depression was probably more painful. Moreover, the impact of civilization on the void could be imagined. The void would no longer be wild and primitive. Various thoughts flashed through Ning Shu's mind, and he said, "Are you going to open a void real estate company?" The Origin King nodded, "Yes, I want to open a real estate company and carry out the infrastructure to the end. I want to make the void brand new and completely change it." His expression was a little fanatical, and his eyes were bright. This was something that he had found a goal, a direction, and something to strive for. The void will become different because of me. Conquer the void and change the void. Ning Shu frowned and did not speak. The Origin King symbolically asked for Ning Shu's opinion. "You said that the human body is weak and not suitable to be subordinates at all, so I will let the human body exert its strength in the field they are good at. This way, we don't need weak humans to be cannon fodder in front, and we can use a roundabout way to conquer the void and change it. Do you think my method is good, or is it wonderful, Ning Shu?" "Wonderful, it's simply wonderful." Ning Shu said, "Have you ever thought about why senior uncle didn't do this, since he has seen more things and experienced more things than you? Almost all of Taishu's subordinates were human elites. Even a weakling like Ning Shu had a relatively strong soul. Without a skill, he couldn't be chosen as a mission enforcer. Taishu Ku wanted to change the entire void and turn it into a highly civilized place. He had the opportunity to do so, and he had the strength to do so. But why didn't Granduncle do so? Ning Shu looked towards the boundless, primordial void. A heavy and oppressive aura surged towards him. The Origin King was a little irritated. Granduncle, I don't want to care, and I don't want to know why Granduncle doesn't want to do this, but I want to do it. Does Granduncle's opinion matter?" To be honest, Ning Shu was not willing to develop the void into a highly civilized world. If he wanted to go to a civilized and prosperous world, he would just go to a small world. What should the void be like? Is this how it should be? Ning Shu glanced at the Origin King, who was full of fighting spirit, and felt a little uncertain in his heart. Everything was born for a reason. The Origin King had always said that he was the king of the void, that he was the one who wanted to conquer the void. Was the void really going to change? Was the one who changed the void the Origin King? Was the void going to change? Was it due to his own will? Was the Origin King really the one who changed the void? The Origin King was very excited. "Let's go back. I have to go back and plan how to open construction companies all over the void." Ning Shu said indifferently, "Do you really think that a house built by humans can withstand a void creature's creation? If a void creature fought inside a house built with ordinary materials, the house would be as fragile as a bubble." The Origin King was not depressed. "What's wrong with that? Since we are building infrastructure in the void, we will definitely use void materials." Ning Shu felt that she couldn't stay in seclusion anymore. She said again, "Do you think the power of humans can really cut or use void materials?" The Origin King nodded. "This is also a problem that needs to be solved. Once these problems are solved, my real estate companies will be able to spread throughout the void." Individually, humans were weak, but when they worked together, they could cut open mountains, open caves, build bridges, and build infrastructure anywhere. Ning Shu was completely speechless and could only say, "Then you can do it." After Ning Shu and Su Wang left the organization and walked far away, the gaze that followed them like a shadow finally disappeared. After returning home, the Origin King was about to start his own business. It was said that everything was difficult at the beginning, difficult in the middle, and difficult in the end. The Origin King had just started and had no idea how to start. There were too many problems that needed to be solved: materials, manpower. He had to go to the small world to find construction talents, architectural designers, and various talents needed to build houses. It was a mess. Ning Shu saw that the Origin King was like a headless fly and suddenly felt relieved. According to the Origin King's current progress, it would take a long time to open a real estate company in the void. The Origin King turned his gaze to Ning Shu. You are very familiar with the humans of the small world. Do you have any ideas? The Origin King had a look of, I want to accept you as a little brother, come and shine for the construction of the void. Ning Shu refused without thinking, I have my own business to attend to. Thank you for your kindness. The Origin King snorted, what are you busy with? I see that you usually idle around and don't do anything serious. Ning Shu suddenly became angry. The Origin King's words were like the worst relatives in his family. What did he mean by, don't do anything serious? What did it have to do with you? I don't need you to know whether I do anything or not. You should be busy with your own things, Chi, the Origin King. What's wrong with you? I gave you a chance, but you're still acting like this. Ning Shu, what's wrong with acting like this? I'm not happy. Not happy to work for you, ba ba. The Origin King looked at the stubborn Ning Shu and realized that if his attitude was tough, there would be a backlash, so he painted a big picture for her. Don't you want to establish a foundation, make great achievements, and become famous in the void? Ning Shu was indifferent to fame and fortune. I don't want to, I'm not interested, it's boring, the Origin King. You're so young yet so lifeless, so dejected and dispirited. Move, come alive, and radiate heat. Hee hee, Ning Shu snorted. Who would want to do something only wanted to lie down? It was just that their strength did not allow it, so they could only move. The Origin King could not persuade the old fox Ning Shu, so he began to persuade others. Chapter 4101. After the Origin King found his target, he no longer tried to subdue his underlings like before. Earthworm showed a confused expression, obviously not knowing what the Origin King wanted to do. The small world Earthworm lived in was an ancient world with a small population, so there were no large-scale real estate companies. Moreover, people who built houses were considered craftsmen and did not have a high social status. The Origin King asked, are you willing to follow me and eat good food and drink good wine? Earthworm. What good food and drink good wine? He had no interest at all. Moreover, the thing he was talking about was obviously a hard job. Earthworm glanced at Ning Shu and said to the Origin King, I'm afraid I can't help you wholeheartedly just now. The Origin King, it doesn't matter, I think you can do it. Earthworm, no, I don't believe you. The Origin King, how can a man say he can't do it? You haven't even tried, how do you know you can't do it? Earthworm found a job and avoided the Origin King. The Origin King walked around the room and found no one he could persuade. What could a child do, especially a cub who only knew how to eat? Negative points, get lost. Earthworm hammered his palm with his fist. Right, there was also the huge Divine Stone clan. Although their brains were a bit small and could not do delicate work, they could carry things. Some huge stones and other things, the Divine Stone clan could do these things. There were so many Divine Stone clan members, even if only one was mobilized, it would be a strong laborer. No, not a laborer, but a powerful helper. Ning Shu watched the Origin King run away towards the territory of the Divine Stone clan and curled his lips. He knew that the Origin King would not let go of anyone around him. What could the Divine Stone clan do? They were strong and could make people carry bricks. Damn, make the Divine Stone clan carry bricks. Not long after, the Origin King returned with a dark face. He saw Ning Shu and said, what's wrong with these people? Each and every one of them was lifeless and incomparably lazy, without any vitality at all. He was still talking, but these stone people had already fallen asleep below, snoring and not wanting to talk at all. They were really drunk. He returned without success again. Why was it so difficult for him to start a business? It was too difficult for him. Origin King Ning Shu asked, "Are you going to the small world?" Ning Shu immediately refused. "I'm not going. I want to go into seclusion." The Origin King immediately said, "Then I can go by myself." "What are you going to do? Are you going to enslave the humans now? It's useless even if you're angry. Have you prepared the stones? Have you prepared the venue? You haven't prepared anything. If you bring the humans into the void, they might die as soon as they arrive. The living environment of the void, even the air, is different from that of a small world. The weak bodies of humans can't adapt at all. Even if you want to find a human, you can't find a weak one." The Origin King slapped his forehead. "Why is it so difficult? Are you really not going to help me?" He suddenly grabbed Ning Shu's hand and said earnestly, "Friend, come and help me. I really need help right now. Please." Ning Shu ruthlessly shook off the Origin King's hand. "I'm very busy. You work hard on your own." The Origin King took out a bag of energy bodies. "With these things, it should be enough for you to help me. Right now, your companions are sleeping and need energy very much. If you need energy in the future, just tell me and I can give it to you." This condition could be said to be very generous, but Ning Shu was not moved at all. Once the gears started moving, there was no time to stop. He was always busy. This was contrary to Ning Shu's original intention. He could no longer fall into a busy life. He just wanted to live a leisurely life and enter the small world when he had nothing to do. If the Origin King's real estate company really opened, how busy would he be in the future? Ning Shu refused, "Thank you, but my ability is limited. I really can't help you. The Origin King, I need people right now. I don't care if your energy is limited." Ning Shu. "Screw you. With this kind of recruitment, it would be a miracle if you could recruit any talents." Ning Shu entered the room and shut the Origin King out. He lay down on the bed and closed his eyes, falling into a deep sleep. The Origin King outside the door paced back and forth for a while before finally snorting. All of them were short-sighted fellows. No one knew how grand the blueprint in his heart was, how unprecedented it was. In order to let the creatures of the void live a good life and enjoy a good life, he had to change the void completely. The creatures of the void would live a good life and enjoy life because of him. At that time, "Don't come begging me." The Origin King imagined Ning Shu kneeling in front of him and crying while pulling at his trousers. Only then did the Origin King feel a little better. Ning Shu's consciousness entered the peerless martial art and swam in the ocean. There were many forces pulling at Ning Shu's soul. Ning Shu wondered if he had to find a helper and rely on himself. In the future, there would be more and more worlds with problems. If he was alone, he would have to split himself into many parts. Did he have to develop in the direction of an organization? No, it was too troublesome to manage. How about splitting his consciousness into many parts and not interfering with each other, just like a clone? However, he had never split his consciousness before. He did not know if it would work or if it would succeed. This was just an idea. Ning Shu entered the miniature world and her consciousness entered a body. This body didn't seem to have a soul. When she entered, the body's soul didn't struggle at all, allowing Ning Shu to smoothly enter the body. Ning Shu was a little puzzled. He quickly opened his eyes and checked the soul of this body. Was this a corpse? His body was floating, as if he was in water. There was also a bone-chilling cold. He looked around and found his body lying in the bathtub. The water in the bathtub was already very cold. One hand was outside the bathtub, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. Ning Shu looked at his wrist and saw that it was cut more than once. Generally, people who cut their wrists to commit suicide would not succeed in one try. The wound was dripping blood from the outside. It flowed along the fingertips and dripped to the ground, forming a large pool of blood. Ning Shu quickly got up. However, he got up too quickly and felt dizzy. There was not much blood left in his body. Ning Shu fell back into the bathtub with a bang. When the dizziness in his head subsided, he slowly crawled out of the bathtub like a zombie. He was so cold that he was shivering. His body was extremely pale. Due to the cold and excessive blood loss, his lips were bruised. Ning Shu immediately turned on the air conditioner. Chapter 4102. It's too cold. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Ning Shu wrapped the blanket tightly around himself. The wound on his wrist was painful, and he used his other hand to wrap the bandage. Sigh, to encounter such a thing, this body already has no soul, and it's all dead. When he committed suicide, the original owner's heart was like dead ashes, so his soul left the body without any reluctance. Furthermore, there were so many cuts on his wrist. If he didn't succeed the first time, he would continue to cut himself. Ning Shu gritted his teeth. He was really ruthless to himself. Usually, if he didn't succeed the first time, he would cut himself a few more times. Ning Shu was extremely cold. He turned the temperature of the air conditioner to high, but it was unable to warm his body. There were some bloodstains on the bandage, but the wound was no longer bleeding. Ning Shu struggled to put on his clothes and called the ambulance, saying that his wrist was bleeding and he was about to die. He gave the address, told the hospital his blood type, and asked them to bring a blood bag as he needed a blood transfusion. Soon, the ambulance arrived. Ning Shu was already panting when he got up and opened the door. There was no color on his face and he looked like a corpse. When the paramedics saw him, they thought that he was a corpse. Ning Shu was tossed around. The back of his hand was tied with an 4 bag and a blood bag. They roughly checked Ning Shu's body. They found that the blood in Ning Shu's body was lower than normal. Logically speaking, when a person's blood reached a certain value, he or she would go into shock and die. If the blood loss exceeded 30% of the body's blood, 1,200 to 1,500 milliliters, it would be life-threatening. She didn't die, and she was still able to call for help. Ning Shu was quickly pushed into the hospital. Because of the 4 and blood transfusion, he didn't feel so cold anymore. He let out a sigh of relief. At least his life was saved. Otherwise, he would have died before he could do anything. Ning Shu laid on the hospital bed. He was very calm as he quietly recuperated. If there was anything, he would do it when he was healthy. Unfortunately, the world was so fucked up. While Ning Shu was quietly recuperating, an annoying person appeared. Looking at the pockmarked face in front of him, the bright sun outside made his face a little oily, and his thick pores glistened with oil. Who was Ning Shu? He was used to seeing beauties, so when he saw such an ordinary and slightly wretched man, he immediately felt quite uncomfortable. You should at least wipe your face with a wet towel. Your face is so oily, it's really disgusting. And at this moment, this man was looking at her with an affectionate gaze. Ning Shu felt like he was about to throw up the vegetarian buns he had eaten in the morning. Please be a human. If you're disgusting, then don't come out to disgust others, okay? Can't you have a little bit of compassion for an injured person like me? It was hard to imagine that this body actually loved him to death. This man said he wanted to break up and had already found his next home. But this body's owner was stubborn and wanted to use death to keep him. Ning Shu was shocked. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that this ugly face, ugly heart, and ugly soul in front of him was not worthy of a girl committing suicide for him. Especially when he learned from the doctor that the original owner had committed suicide by cutting his wrist. He was reprimanded by the doctor for always committing suicide for love. He simply did not take his life seriously. Although this man repeatedly apologized and said that he would be fine and that such a thing would not happen in the future. But his eyes revealed an indescribable pride. It was like a medal. For him, the original owner's suicide was his merit. This was a reward for his charm. When he returned to the ward, Ning Shu was gnawing on an apple. He asked the nurse to buy it for him. When he saw him, Ning Shu could not spit out the apple in his throat. He could not swallow it. Don't mention how disgusting it was. As an outsider, Ning Shu really did not understand why the original owner could love him to death. This kind of feeling was very unimaginable. He sat by the bed and took the apple that Ning Shu had gnawed on. Why didn't you peel it before eating it? What if you leave me? You can't even peel an apple. Then he began to peel the apple for Ning Shu. He looked a little gentle. Ning Shu's eyes were sore. He felt like he was going to cry. But all the hair on his body stood up. His whole person was not good. It was too disgusting. Especially with that greasy face. This kind of pretending to be gentle was like a nuclear bomb explosion. What do you mean by without you, I can't even peel an apple? This father's apple was washed clean by the nurse. If it wasn't for his other hand being temporarily disabled, how could he not even be able to peel an apple? He was not a baby, he was a patient with cerebral palsy. Ning Shu was speechless as she watched him peel the apple. Moreover, she felt flattered in her heart. How lowly was this Gu Yang to be flattered by peeling an apple? Here. The man handed the apple to Ning Shu. She looked at the apple that had been contaminated twice and had no appetite at all. His hand must have touched his face. That oily face must have been stained with the oil on his face. This apple must have been stained with the oil on his face. The more Ning Shu thought about it, the more disgusted he felt. He felt that his stomach was churning. I have no appetite. I don't want to eat it. Throw it away. Ning Shu said directly. Although the memory of her body told her to take the apple, Ning Shu did not want to touch it at all. The man's expression froze for a moment. His eyes were filled with anger. Obviously, he did not expect that she would not accept his good treatment of her. He had lowered his status. But he seemed to have thought of something. Okay, if you don't want to eat it, then forget it. Let me see your hand. Ning Shu looked at him coldly. Why are you looking at my hand? Let me see your wound. But you must be in pain. Ning Shu was expressionless. It's okay. I don't feel anything. The man was very excited. We are all flesh and blood. How can you not feel anything? He ignored Ning Shu's wishes and pulled Ning Shu's wrist to check. Ning Shu's hand hurt and he did not dare to use any strength. Being pulled by the man, he felt like a toad falling on the back of his foot. It was disgusting. Then, he took out his phone and took a few photos of Ning Shu's bandaged wrist. Ning Shu was speechless. What the hell was the meaning of taking photos of her wound? Keeping it as a memento? Ning Shu was not someone who would hold back his questions. He asked directly, why did you take photos? I want to keep this to remind myself that something like this will never happen again. I won't let anything like this happen to you again. Luo Wan, I'm sorry, the man said. Ning Shu covered his heart with his right hand. Fuck, I'm going to vomit. But in the eyes of the man, this woman loved him very much. She loved him so much that he could not control himself. This was too good. Ning Shu felt that he could not breathe. This was too weird. Chapter 4103. Ning Shu fell into a deep confusion and doubt. Was it because he hadn't come to the small world for a long time that the people in the small world had changed? Was she abnormal, or was the original owner and this man abnormal? Could such a man make a good girl commit suicide for love? He really couldn't figure it out, it was ridiculous. Was she blind, or was the original owner's eyes covered by something? After the man took the photo, he let go of Ning Shu's hand. He didn't even ask if the wound hurt. After taking and letting go, Ning Shu's wrist inevitably hurt, but Ning Shu didn't have time to be angry, because his heart was full of doubts. I'm really confused, it's too difficult. He felt that his worldview had been reshaped. Especially when he saw the process of their love, Ning Shu felt that his three views had been reshaped. The original owner and Zhang Qi met in a milk tea shop. At that time, Zhang Qi took away the original owner's milk tea. The original owner was very angry, but Zhang Qi's attitude was very good. He compensated her with a cup and added a small dessert. Don't hit a smiling person. The original owner felt that there was no need to hold on to it. The two sat together and chatted for a while. Later they added each other's contact information. Zhang Qi insisted on saying good morning and good night every day, so the two slowly chatted. The more they talked until late into the night. The original owner was an ordinary little girl. She didn't have a beautiful appearance, nor did she have a rich family. She felt that there was nothing on her that the other party would want. The colleagues and friends around her either had families or were no longer single. She was the only one who was lonely and wanted to fall in love. Have a sweet and beautiful relationship. Zhang Qi was really not good looking, but although there was a little conflict when they first met, Zhang Qi handled it well and even treated her to a cake. When people were in a good mood, everything they looked at had a kind of beautification, especially after the contact was on the internet. All the emotions and thoughts were transmitted to the other party through the internet. This feeling was even more hazy. The heart was constantly fantasizing, imagining, talking about the sky and the earth, talking about the stars and the moon, talking about life ideals, talking about work, and infinite yearning for the future. At this time, the original owner's heart already had some thoughts. She felt that she could develop a relationship with him. It just depended on who proposed to meet first. Zhang Qi, on the other hand, was quite calm. She had no intention of meeting him at all. She was just communicating online. But the original owner was a little anxious. At this time, whoever was anxious would be at a disadvantage. She took the lead and asked in a joking tone if they wanted to come out and meet. Zhang Qi did not agree immediately. He was very considerate and said that he did not want to disturb her. Moreover, he said that he was not good-looking and was afraid that she would be disillusioned when she saw him. When the host said that she wanted to meet Zhang Qi, she was actually a little conflicted. Zhang Qi didn't look that good, but since she said it out of consideration for Zhang Qi, the host didn't have any qualms. She comforted her, telling her that her looks were given to her by her parents and that she couldn't control it. They met in a restaurant. It was not a high-class restaurant, but the environment was quiet. Zhang Qi behaved like a gentleman and always put her first. The original owner's heart was pounding. Facing Zhang Qi's oily face, she comforted herself that everyone had flaws. No one was perfect. After the meal, Zhang Qi said, "I know that women nowadays are strong and independent. They don't like men to pay the bill. How about this, you pay for this meal, and I'll pay next time." The original owner was stunned. Zhang Qi continued, "How about this, we'll go Dutch." This was the broken window effect. First, ask a difficult question to make the other party a little uncomfortable. Then, take a step back and the other party will definitely agree. This meal was going Dutch. After the two confirmed their relationship, the original owner paid for their meals. But Zhang Qi would buy small gifts for the original owner, such as a silver ring or a necklace that was worth a few dozen yuan. This instantly soothed the original owner's grievances and feelings of loss. Women in love rarely cared about the value of things. What they cared more about was the feelings behind the things. It was a gift from my boyfriend. Zhang Qi was a little temperamental. He would say, "Look at you, you're so strong and strong. Other than me, no one can tolerate your temper." In Ning Shu's view, this son of a bitch cheated money and destroyed people's self-confidence. No matter how he looked at it, Zhang Qi had no love for the original owner. He spoke with assurance in front of the original owner, considerate and not messy. When you love someone, you're nervous and helpless. The whole thing was a trap. Damn it. He also found fault with the original owner and attacked her self-confidence. You're not good, that's not good. Only I want you. If it was someone else, I wouldn't be able to bear it. Usually, when people heard such words, they would subconsciously think, am I that bad? They would also feel lucky to have someone who could tolerate them. After hearing such words too many times, it was like brainwashing. They would even believe it. The original owner's salary was not high to begin with. Now that he had to support two people, he could only work hard to save money in certain areas. When he went out, the standard of living was the same. When the original owner was alone, he lived a bitter life. The money was spent to buy a bunch of cheap jewelry and cheap cosmetics. It would stink the eyes if they were to apply it. After being in love for a while, the original owner didn't feel anything. Love and being loved were not so obvious, but she felt a lot inferior and couldn't leave Zhang Qi. When they went out, she paid for everything herself. In reality, she couldn't afford it. There were several times when she wanted to say it, but she couldn't. She was subconsciously afraid that if she said it, this man would leave her. She cherished the things that she spent her energy and money on. She spent so much time and money on this man. If he left, the original owner couldn't bear it. She had done so many things for him and spent so much money on him. She had bought all his clothes, pants, and shoes. She had dressed her boyfriend up to look good. During this time, the original owner was pregnant once. Of course, the child couldn't be born. She was physically and mentally exhausted, but she couldn't stop. Ning Shu felt tired and bitter just by looking at it. People were afraid of being taken advantage of. It was like gambling. They wanted to get their money back and fell deeper into it. At this time, the original owner probably couldn't tell whether it was because she was unable to extricate herself from love or because she was unwilling to give up. Ning Shu's heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys hurt. From the beginning to the end, this girl was tricked. How much experience did Zhang Qi have in flirting with girls? He controlled people's hearts and destroyed their confidence. If it weren't for the fact that these two people didn't know each other, Ning Shu would suspect that Zhang Qi was here for revenge. What was the difference between this and an enemy? Ning Shu felt a sudden pain in her wrist. She chuckled in her heart. Chapter 4105. If you meet someone who's difficult to deal with, the brothers in the group can come up with ideas. Joining such a group required a group fee, and it wasn't cheap. There was a review mechanism, and ordinary people weren't allowed to join. After all, they knew in their hearts that what they did couldn't be exposed to the public. After joining the group, although they hadn't met each other before, they were all brothers and sisters with the same father and mother who had the same goal. Seeing how angry Zhang Qi was, they all had a common enemy, as if Ning Shu was their enemy who killed their father. After venting for a while, Zhang Qi's anger subsided a little, and he told them what happened just now. The brothers in the group gave him the advice to endure it. If he couldn't hold it in, all his efforts would be in vain. Moreover, he was the weaker party, and the people around him would only think that she was the stronger party and would sympathize with him. People had always tried to persuade people to reconcile, not to break up. When it came to relationships, they all liked a good ending. Even if the ending wasn't good, it had to look good. When the two of them got back together, the people around them didn't care about how the two of them felt. They only felt that it was perfect and insisted on pulling them together. Anyone who came back from the gates of hell would feel a little angry. Now that she's tormented you, after tormenting you for a while, she's feeling sorry for you. Women were soft-hearted, or else they would forgive a man if he just knelt down and cried. They were despicable. Their tone was disdainful, and when they criticized, it was as if there was a deep hatred between them, overflowing with hostility. Zhang Qi didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. Instead, he happily curled up the corner of his mouth. "I'll endure it for a while. A moment of forbearance in exchange for a spare tire that can't be chased away, a future wife that can be beaten and scolded at will. It was a good deal." Zhang Qi looked at the bathroom mirror and found that his face was indeed quite oily. Under the light, it was glowing. He thought of his ex-girlfriend's words in his heart, and he was angry. He was angry that she despised him, and at the same time, he felt a little inferior about his appearance. He was angry that he was so ugly. How good would it be if he was good-looking? If he didn't join the PUA group, Zhang Qi would be a man without a girlfriend, no money, no looks, no shine, and he would be just like everyone else. Later, under the bombardment of all kinds of tricks, and after successfully tricking a few girls, his inner self-confidence swelled. Now that his prey was telling him that he was ugly, Zhang Qi was furious. She washed her face. Her face was greasy and water couldn't wash it off. She found a piece of tissue to wipe her face. Then, he entered the ward. Ning Shu was playing with his phone with one hand. When Zhang Qi came in, he glanced at him expressionlessly. For a moment, Zhang Qi felt extremely humble. She looked at people as if they were insects, indifferent and emotionless. It was suffocating. That kind of irrepressible anger suddenly surged out in an overwhelming manner. This lowly woman who died for him, what right did she have to stare at him like that? Zhang Qi found a topic to talk about. "You're hospitalized. Do you want to inform your family?" Ning Shu put down his phone. "If my parents knew that I committed suicide for a man, they would definitely kill me." Hearing this, Zhang Qi's eyes were overflowing with pride. A woman had committed suicide for him, threatening him with her death so that he would not leave her. Ning Shu said again, "If you don't leave, I won't dare to inform my family. I'm afraid that they will go crazy if they know that I committed suicide for a useless and ugly man like you. I'm already very unfilial by hurting my own body. I don't want their hearts to be hurt too." Zhang Qi was speechless. He understood what she was saying, but what did she mean by that? Was she saying that he was ugly and she couldn't let her parents know about it? The young man with the broken leg couldn't help but laugh out loud. Looking at Zhang Qi's stiff expression, he couldn't help but laugh. Zhang Qi's heart was boiling with darkness. Inferiority, anger, embarrassment, in front of so many people, he didn't give him any face. The laughter next to him made Zhang Qi's face turn red. He hated Ning Shu in his heart. She loved him, but she treated him like this. Bitch, all women are bitches. Zhang Qi's pretense was like a piece of paper that could be torn apart easily. The confidence that he had painstakingly built, the confidence that he had gained from a woman, would collapse instantly because of one sentence. Zhang Qi was so embarrassed that he wanted to run away. It was difficult to even breathe in this ward. However, there was a kind of belief that supported him. He put on a stiff and twisted smile and changed the topic. "Do you want some water?" Ning Shu looked at him and said mercifully, "All right, pour me some water. By the way, have you washed your hands? Have you disinfected them?" Zhang Qi was so embarrassed that he poured Ning Shu water from the kettle and handed the boiling water to Ning Shu. "You're going to burn yourself to death." Ning Shu took the cup and put it back in his hand. "It's too hot. Don't you know how to cool it? Sit down. Let's talk." Ning Shu patted the bed, looking like he was going to have a heart-to-heart talk with Zhang Qi. Zhang Qi was speechless. This was so fucking weird. He felt that this woman had become a little different after she died. He obviously felt that he couldn't control this woman anymore. The most obvious thing was that she didn't say or do anything. Zhang Qi sat down, trembling. He didn't want to have a heart-to-heart talk in front of others because of the embarrassment he gave himself before. He sat on the bed and said, "Take care of yourself now. We'll talk when we get back." Ning Shu said directly, "I'm afraid that you won't listen to me when you get back." Ning Shu didn't care about Zhang Qi's expression at all. In front of the other two patients, he couldn't just get rid of her. In front of strangers, Zhang Qi still wanted to pretend to be a good person. Who knew, maybe he would meet a woman who was familiar with them in the future. It could be said that all women in the world were their targets, whether it was money or sex. Zhang Qi said reluctantly, "What do you want to talk about?" Ning Shu counted on his fingers and said, "When we get married, the house will be a problem. Your job will also be a problem. You should settle down and find a proper job. When you have children in the future, how will you support them? Now I have to spend money to go out, but when we have children in the future, I can't afford it at all." Zhang Qi suddenly felt sweat on his back, as if he was being publicly executed. Several pairs of eyes stared at him, and he didn't dare to think about the meaning contained in those eyes. Disdain, surprise, watching a good show. His dignity as a man had been crushed to pieces at this moment. He hated this woman to the core. As if making plans for their future, Zhang Qi almost couldn't help but want to leave. Who wants to live with you? Who wants to have a future with you? Chapter 4106. Everyone had to earn a living from sponsored partnerships. If you wanted to earn a living from sponsored partnerships, you had to have money. Even if you didn't have money, you had to have food at home. It was okay if you didn't have a job. Ning Shu was really trying his best to persuade him. Zhang Qi's face was full of anger, making the people around him feel that Ning Shu wasn't worth it. This kind of thing made people angry and helpless. The old lady next to him spoke again. She was a little lonely because the person accompanying her to the bed hadn't arrived yet. She said, "Young man, you can't not have a job, especially when you have to give birth. Even animals know that they don't give birth when they don't have enough to eat." Ning Shu was speechless. What the fuck did she mean by "even animals know that"? This old lady's words were really interesting. This was a normal phenomenon. When their survival was threatened, animals would instinctively not give birth to offspring. In modern society, everyone was saying that they couldn't afford to have children. Zhang Qi was so angry that he couldn't help but retort, "What does it have to do with you? This damned old lady, this kind of old lady was the most annoying." The old lady sighed and shook her head. Young people these days really don't know what they're talking about. What we're saying is what we've experienced and seen a lot. We just want to warn him. Ning Shu smiled and said, "Auntie, thank you. I think you're right. Now I'm trying to persuade him to find a job, to be serious, down to earth, and to work hard." The old lady smiled. "You're a good person. Actually, if you see something wrong, you can, you old lady, people always try to persuade people to reconcile and not to divorce. You're so evil, trying to drive a wedge between people's feelings." Zhang Qi was furious. People always tried to persuade people to reconcile and not to divorce. How bad was he that he tried to persuade people to divorce because he was rejected? "Do I know you well? Go back and take care of your own children and grandchildren." Zhang Qi's face was full of malevolence as he argued with the old lady. He was angry because she was rejecting him. Ning Shu's face immediately darkened. "Chen Qi, how can you say that? She's trying to persuade us out of good intentions and you're saying such evil things. I always thought that although you're ugly, poor, and useless, I thought that you might have a good heart. But now, it seems that your heart is also very evil and very black." She also took every opportunity to say that he was ugly and useless. Every word she said now was about these things. The veins on Zhang Qi's forehead bulged. He really couldn't stand it anymore. He wanted to kill this bitch. The air in this place was stagnant, making it hard for people to breathe. Their backs were already wet. Ning Shu completely ignored Zhang Qi's current predicament and asked, "Do you agree with what I said?" Zhang Qi sneered. "After committing suicide, you think you're superior? Do you really think you can do whatever you want?" Ning Shu said again, "Let's not talk about whether you will marry me or not. Even if you marry another woman, do you have a house, do you have a job, do you have any income? You don't have any of these. Which woman would be willing to be with you? If you don't have money, you can't live your life." When lowly men heard this, they immediately came to life. They didn't have any resources or advantages, so they immediately turned around and said that women were materialistic and had power. Were they going to sleep on the streets after marriage? Marriage wasn't targeted to help the poor. What were women after? Zhang Qi couldn't stand it anymore. "I didn't want to marry you. Why do you care if I have money, house, or car? Are you marrying a person or a car?" Ning Shu's expression froze for a moment. "You don't want to marry me, do you? Then you've been lying to me before." Ning Shu began to cry. "You're really bad. When others say that you're a scumbag, I don't believe it. It turns out that you're really a scumbag. You don't contribute to society. Instead, you go around coaxing girls. You even flirted with my colleague before. It's a pity that my colleague has such high standards and ignored you. Because of this, our relationship is not good." Anyway, all women were Zhang Qi's targets. Sometimes when Zhang Qi came to pick up the original owner from work, his eyes would be glued to the female colleagues. These women who worked honestly in the company might have a smaller circle. Most importantly, they had a large salary. They were Zhang Qi's target. After being with the original owner, his face had become fat. Whether it was going out to eat or cooking for him, she was very willing to eat. Now that Ning Shu wanted to give Zhang Qi food, he was dreaming. He would rather give the food to a stray dog. At least the stray dog could wag its tail at her. It was simply like a beast fattening a poisonous snake. It was suffocating. Because of the quarrel between Ning Shu and Zhang Qi, more and more people gathered around to watch the fun. When they heard Ning Shu's words, the surrounding people gasped and booed. It was rare to see such a scumbag. He ate from the bowl and looked at the pot, and looked at many pots. Translator, Lonely Tree Editor, Millman 97. Being stared at by so many people, Zhang Qi's face turned red. His oily and pockmarked face turned red, making the pox marks on his face even more obvious. It was really ugly. Now Zhang Qi didn't have any intention of playing tricks. His strong desire to survive made him just want to leave here. He didn't even care to say anything to Ning Shu. He pushed through the crowd and ran away. Ning Shu's face was full of grief. "Don't go. Don't leave me behind." That mournful voice made the people who heard it tremble. Oh my God, this was a TV show. Such an ugly man, who had nothing, could make a woman so dead set on him. Many people wanted to grab Ning Shu's shoulders and shake him hard. Wake up, he was a scumbag. It wasn't terrible to meet a scumbag. It was terrible to have no consciousness at all. They didn't feel that they had met a scumbag. They felt that it was normal. The most terrible thing was to treat suffering as a normal state. Without consciousness, they couldn't resist. The onlookers gradually left. They gathered in twos and threes to talk. If nothing unexpected happened, Ning Shu would be the next topic of conversation. They sympathized with her, but they had to say that she was stupid. As for Zhang Qi, he was branded as a scumbag. He couldn't be removed. Ning Shu took out his phone and began to play with it. He finally got rid of the disgusting thing and felt that the air around him was much fresher. It was so good. The two patients next door looked at Ning Shu with a complicated expression. The old lady opened her mouth and said, "Little girl, there are many men in the world." The one-legged young man next to her had a complicated expression. Yes. Why were good women ruined by bad men? and some good men ruined by bad women. Couldn't the good guys be together and the bad guys torture each other? Ning Shu said faintly, I know. After going through so many things, I know what to do. The one-legged young man asked, what do you know? Ning Shu looked silly and sweet. I feel that I'm not good enough. Even a man like him doesn't love me. The young man. Chapter 4108. Zhang Qi's scalp was about to explode. His ears were filled with the other party's babbling. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were trampling on his heart. Every word she uttered was laced with venom. All of Zhang Qi's tricks and words to suppress the other party were learned from the group chat. However, this woman's words came as if they were at her fingertips. Now, Zhang Qi was petrified. Ning Shu didn't care about Zhang Qi's feelings, nor did he want to humble himself to protect his sensitive heart. It was his first time being a human, why should he humble himself? Ning Shu finished babbling. There was no response from the other end of the phone. Ning Shu said, hello, are you still alive? Zhang Qi said with some difficulty, yes. Ning Shu, then do you remember what I said? Also, wear tighter clothes. I don't know what you wear all day. You have no taste at all. It's so old-fashioned. You can either dress more casual or more businesslike. In short, you have to have a style. Don't mess around. Wear leather shoes and sweatpants. I've never seen a man dress like that. Before you come to pick me up, go buy some new clothes. If you don't know what to buy, ask the shop assistant. The shop assistant will be better than you. Your hair, sigh, there are too many problems. You can't fix it in one go. I'll be done in 2 hours. I'm telling you in advance. Rent a car, buy a new set of clothes, and wash your hair and face if possible. Don't be disgusting with grease. They're calling me. Remember what I said. This is the only time you can earn some face for yourself. If you back down, you'll always be a lowly person in other people's eyes. Zhang Qi listened to her babbling and his head hurt. He subconsciously asked, money, before he could finish. Ning Shu hung up the phone. There was no way he was going to give him money, not in this lifetime. If you buy clothes, I'll give you money. If you rent a car and pick up girls, I'll give you money. Regardless of whether he came or not, Ning Shu had achieved his goal. He had dealt a blow to Zhang Qi and stabbed him in the heart. When it came to spitting venom, Ning Shu would never admit defeat. If he insisted on fighting for face, it would be even better. Renting a car and buying clothes cost money, and Zhang Qi lost a lot of money again. He had swindled money from women, and in the end, he had lost a lot of money. How miserable and unbearable it must have been. A losing business wouldn't last long. Ning Shu wanted to enter the group to get more information and report it. Ning Shu went back to eat, drink, and have fun with his colleagues. For this kind of gathering, they were all female colleagues and did not need to serve the men tea. They could do whatever they wanted. Ning Shu glanced at his watch from time to time. He was curious if Zhang Qi would come to save face. When the party was about to end, Ning Shu received a call from Zhang Qi. She told him that she was waiting for him outside and asked him to bring his colleagues out with him. Ning Shu smirked. Obviously, Zhang Qi was going to show off. Showing off was either a waste of time or money. Ning Shu applauded. Come on, keep it up. At the door, Ning Shu smiled and said to his colleagues, my boyfriend is here to pick me up. Zhang Qi pretentiously got out of the car and waved at Ning Shu. She closed the door and Ning Shu walked over. Especially when she saw that Ning Shu was surrounded by female colleagues, her eyes lit up. I'm here to pick you up. Let's go. His voice was as gentle as yours. He had a very strong cologne on him that was a bit smoky. He obviously went to get a haircut. Calling it a haircut was a bit flattering. He didn't have the money, so he probably went to get a haircut. The clothes he was wearing were also bought. As for the car he rented, it wasn't a luxury car. Ning Shu waved to his female colleagues. Then I'll go first. Then he followed Zhang Qi into the car. Zhang Qi slowly opened the door for Ning Shu. Then he slowly walked around the front of the car to the driver's seat and started the car. Ning Shu, do you want a ticket? Zhang Qi stopped breathing and drove away. Ning Shu said, you did a good job today. At least you got back a little. Zhang Qi was happy. Then he thought of his money. He rented a car and bought clothes. Although he pretended to be rich, he didn't have any money in his pocket. Zhang Qi wanted to get the money back from Ning Shu. He said, the money this time. Ning Shu interrupted him. Where are you driving? Is this the way home? Zhang Qi was angry. He gritted his teeth and said, this car is rented. Don't tell me you don't want to return it. Do you think I bought it and it's yours? Ning Shu raised his phone and said to Zhang Qi, I share my location with my colleagues. It's not safe at night, so we share our locations. Now you have to drive the car to the company where you registered it. Everyone will know that you rented the car immediately. If you don't have money, then you don't have money. Don't pretend to be rich. That's even worse. Zhang Qi, what the fuck, he felt very helpless now. He felt that the tricks he learned had no effect on her at all. Instead, he was struggling. He had a bad feeling. He was like a bug stuck on a spider's web. He struggled, but the more he struggled, the more he got stuck. In the end, he was eaten. But he was very unwilling to give up. This feeling was like a male praying mantis. Didn't he know that he would be eaten by a female praying mantis? Of course, he knew. He thought that he could run away after giving it a shot. But in the end, he ran away. Zhang Qi looked at the shared location. Then you can just turn it off. Ning Shu said without thinking, how can I do that? If I suddenly turn it off, people will think that something happened to me. Then, there will be more trouble. So you have to send me home and then return the car. Anyway, you rented it. You rented it to send me home. If you don't send me home, how can you do that? Zhang Qi didn't say anything and turned the car around. He was a little afraid of this woman's venom, but for the sake of his goal, he had to get back the money he spent this time. When they arrived at the destination, Ning Shu opened the door and was about to get out of the car. Zhang Qi reached out and grabbed Ning Shu. Ning Shu gave him a big slap and shouted, what are you doing? You didn't say anything and suddenly reached out. Do you know that you scared me? Her eyes were full of condemnation. Zhang Qi was stunned by the slap. He couldn't hold back the anger in his heart anymore. You bitch, he wanted to fight back, but Ning Shu had already gotten out of the car and slammed the door. Zhang Qi wanted to grab him, but he was hit by the car door head-on and saw stars. Zhang Qi held his forehead and his face turned purple. Wait here. You're not allowed to leave. Ning Shu said, what are you doing? Get out. What's wrong with you? Zhang Qi opened the door from the other side and rushed in front of Ning Shu. He raised his hand and was about to hit him. I can't take it anymore. Chapter 4109. Zhang Qi raised his hand to hit Ning Shu, but Ning Shu grabbed his hand and pressed it down. Then, Zhang Qi faced the camera and started a video call. She smiled and said, I'm going home with my boyfriend. Be careful. Facing the camera, Zhang Qi's face stiffened into a smile. Of course, he couldn't hit someone in front of so many people. Although he knew that what he was doing was inhumane, he couldn't let others know. Ning Shu closed the video call and waved at Zhang Qi. Okay, you can go. Zhang Qi was very unhappy with her attitude. She didn't look like she was willing to die for him at all. Zhang Qi said, I want to stay tonight. I want to take a picture of you and post it tonight. Let's see how proud you can be. Zhang Qi's expression was too easy to read. He was gritting his teeth and looking proud. It was easy to figure out what he was thinking. These were the usual methods used by UA. If it wasn't photos, it was videos. They could sell them to specific websites and make a profit. Now, Zhang Qi's mind was full of dirty thoughts. Ning Shu snorted. Impossible. I haven't even forgiven you. If you want to enter my house, think about that child from before. That child's soul is now on your shoulder, gnawing at your flesh and blood. Zhang Qi's face stiffened. Didn't you agree not to have that child? Ning Shu's face was ugly. That's why I regret it. I will never get pregnant with you again. I think that trash genes like yours shouldn't be passed down. They should be eliminated. Whether or not I'll be with you in the future depends on your performance. If you make me sad, you can get lost. You have no right to enter my house now. Get out. Ning Shu said viciously. His eyes were full of disdain. Ugly, ugly, coward. Men were arrogant and inferior creatures. They needed to be worshipped. Their hearts were fragile, especially when it came to relationships. A single negative word from a woman could make them suffer. They could even kill someone out of anger. Ning Shu wantonly sprayed venom, slicing away at Zhang Qi's dignity. Zhang Qi's face turned red. She couldn't stand it anymore. She ignored Ning Shu's attacks. Was Ning Shu the kind of person who would take a beating without doing anything? Of course not. She immediately cried and shouted, "Help! Help! Don't hit me anymore." Seeing such a pretentious Ning Shu, she became even angrier and chased after Ning Shu. Ning Shu's shout alarmed many people in the neighborhood. She rushed to the door to find the security guard and pitifully shouted, "Save me, my boyfriend wants to kill me." Several security guards restrained Zhang Qi, who was not very tall. How can a man attack a woman? Zhang Qi struggled with a pale face. Noticing the contempt in the security guard's eyes, Zhang Qi struggled even harder. It was not like this at all. Zhang Qi looked at Ning Shu, who was sobbing at the side. No matter how much he refused to admit it, he knew that this woman did it on purpose for revenge. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Qi's eyes and raised the corner of his mouth. When the security guard looked at her, she had a pitiful look. She was too good at pretending. This was simply not her former self. Could it be that dying once had changed her so much? Zhang Qi was a little scared. He wanted to leave now. He didn't want to be entangled with her. He wanted to change his target. This target was out of his control. But he was very unwilling. He was played by a woman. He could play with a woman and deceive a woman, but if a woman deceived him, he definitely couldn't. He was very angry. The security guard Ning Shu asked, "He is your boyfriend. It's up to you. Throw him out or call the police." It was still the same old saying. There were only zero domestic violence and countless domestic violence. Now they were just boyfriend and girlfriend. They might as well break up directly. If he called the police, he might be able to teach this man a lesson. But it was very likely that this man would take revenge and bear a grudge. Zhang Qi felt that these security guards were lame. His face was obviously swollen. He was beaten up like this. Look at the injuries on her body. Call the police. He definitely couldn't call the police. Ning Shu was sobbing. He had a timid look on his face. When he heard the police, he seemed to be frightened. Call the police? I don't dare to call the police. Forget it, forget it. She kept waving her hand. If I call the police, he will kill me. The security guard looked at Zhang Qi with disdain. Ning Shu mustered up his courage. Then call the police. Zhang Qi's eyes widened. He looked at Ning Shu dumbfoundedly. How dare she, the security guard helped to call the police. He helped to hold down Zhang Qi who was struggling to escape. Soon, the police car arrived. Ning Shu and Zhang Qi were taking statements in the police station in the middle of the night. Zhang Qi felt extremely wronged. He didn't even touch her finger. How did he become a domestic violence man? Of course, the police also prioritized education. Ning Shu nodded, looking very, very scared. Zhang Qi, on the other hand, was unruly. The police had to focus on educating Zhang Qi. Zhang Qi became more and more indignant. Any rebuttal would be seen as quibbling. Leaving the police station in the middle of the night, Ning Shu took out his phone to take a selfie. He also took a picture of Zhang Qi and the police station behind him. He sent a sad message. I thought there was a future, but I didn't expect it to still not work out. Everyone was speechless. What was going on? One moment they were showing off their love at home, and the next moment they were at the police station. This was too much. Zhang Qi was furious. He rushed over to Ning Shu majestically. Ning Shu directly burst into tears. Zhang Qi was so shocked that he staggered. However, he didn't dare to do anything to Ning Shu. Ning Shu took out a bill. This is the money I spent on you. Return it to me. If you dare to disappear, I will definitely call the police. Then, you will be a liar. Zhang Qi subconsciously took the bill and looked at it. It was a big page full of small things. He was too lazy to look at it and directly looked at the amount at the end. 50,000. Why don't you go rob a bank? Ning Shu chuckled. 50,000 is just the amount after splitting the bill. I'm the one who pays for your meals and even your rent. The little money I saved before is all gone now. You better give me the money quickly. Otherwise, I will call the police. You are a damn liar. How many people do you think you have cheated? Zhang Qi was shocked. He didn't know if she knew or if she was just guessing. If you don't pay me back, I will expose you online. The name will be, My Weird Boyfriend. You even need your girlfriend to pay for you. Zhang Qi stuttered for a long time, unable to say a word. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.